Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we talk about movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
All right.
And I don't know who I was going for there, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Zorro.
Like, I don't think I sounded like Zorro. I just kind of
I
did a
don't
gruff
think I sounded
or
either.
right.
Just
It's like a
generic action.
Maybe Anthony Hopkins
fantasy
or right.
voice.
Does his accent come through at all? Like, I can't tell what he's really doing.
Yeah, it's
here.
subtle. He does a subtle accent.
Yeah, kind of.
Right.
He talks with like this.
He does a tasteful amount of inflection on his
Are you talking about
voice.
Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins. Yeah.
Or
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
Is that me this time?
Yeah.
All right, David.
also across from me,
Irina.
and to my left,
Zorro.
also known as,
Noah.
Two very different people.
and storing his nemesis brother's head in a pickle jar for years and years just so he can pull it out for dramatic effect at the opportune moment, we have...
AJ.
It's pretty morbid of you. Seems like a kind of cumbersome to carry that thing around everywhere you go.
The thing is, back in the day,
Cumbersome.
can you imagine having to like move that from place to place and explain yourself to people?
Oh, wait. I need to take my jars.
Yeah, I have
Heads.
one head jar. I got one hand jar.
And we missed that joke, I think, because it was quiet. But did you say cucumbersome?
Yeah, pickles.
Because I love that. That is a cucumbersome head. The movie we're referencing, of course, and the movie we're talking about tonight, this morning, whenever you may be listening, is The Mask of Zorro. A movie that came out in 1998. Did I just hear an O?
I was on board with the first two words.
The
The
mask.
Mask of...
No,
Oh,
just the
God,
mask.
Just
Tornado
the
and-
mask.
The Mask.
With Jim Carrey, baby.
AJ, I regret to inform you that we're not talking about The Mask. We're actually talking about The Mask of Zorro.
I guess they're both sort of vigilantes.
That's a spicy quesadilla.
They are vigilantes.
yeah.
Kind of. I don't know.
I actually think the mask might technically be a villain.
He's an anarchist. He's an
anti-hero.
anarchist.
And, all right, let me clear this up. In the comics, he is definitely more of a villain. In the movie, he is definitely more of a hero.
He's still an anarchist, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anti-hero in the movies, I guess.
The Mask of Zorro was directed by Martin Campbell, another filmmaker who has like just a wildly inconsistent filmography. One day he might be directing the best movie in the world, and the other day he might be directing Green Lantern. So this director is responsible for films such as Criminal Law, No Escape, GoldenEye, Vertical Limit, The Legend of Zorro, Casino Royale, Edge of Darkness, Green Lantern, The Foreigner, Protege, and most recently, Memory.
You listed a lot of movies that I didn't know and a lot of movies I did know. It was hit or miss on those.
Yeah, but he's very, it's kind of baffling because Casino Royale, I don't think this is controversial, but I think Casino Royale is one of the best, if not the best, James Bond movie ever
It's
made.
way up there.
GoldenEye is up there as well. He is responsible for in my opinion, the best Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie and the best Daniel Craig James Bond movie. No other director can claim that. You know, he rebooted James Bond twice successfully.
Crazy.
And then did The Mask of Zorro, which very much has a James Bond-ish intro, only done in the swashbuckly way, the way he walks into the frame and does the Z into the thing. You almost expect the blood to come down and then cue the
Lion's
theme
roar.
music. There are the lion roars. This was peak like lion roar explosion, which is so confusing to me why that was a thing because it's so obvious now in
choice.
hindsight.
No, and they knew what they were doing.
I had a theory where it's like talking about the timeline. They may not have the widest array of sounds to choose from the way they do now. So it might have just been sort of an inventive way to use it.
You could just get an explosion sound. But yeah, I don't know.
This movie and the sounds kind of remind me a lot of an older time, you know, sort of like watching black and white, fun, sort of adventure films where they would throw in weird animal noises like that just for effect.
And I guess it's always, it's interesting because we always have to bring up Lord of the Rings, but there's many unconventional sound choices that they put for that, like walrus noises for the troll, or like the Balrog is actually the scraping of rocks against each other to create the roar. So
I do feel like technology has advanced in the sound department for sure. So yeah.
But yeah, back to his filmography. It's just so funny that a director can be this inconsistent. Because Green Lantern is a movie that's constantly derided as one of the worst superhero movies. I know it has like 10 defenders out there across the world, but it is by and large
10.
Yeah, it is by and large known as a bad movie. And when you watch that, and then you watch something like Zorro or Casino Royale, you're like, the same person made this? Like, he almost doesn't have like a signature style to his movies. He's just, sometimes he's a very, very good director, and sometimes he's not. And like, I can't draw a similarity between Zorro and Green Lantern other than they both have action sequences. Like, that's it.
And maybe there's a central hero.
Yeah. I don't know, Irina or anyone else, do y'all see any similarities between his films?
I did not see
Absolutely
Green Lantern,
not.
so
Yeah.
I have no way. As you were
I mean, both
listing
have
them,
pickled heads.
Yeah.
I mean, he's actually really good at incorporating romances, I think.
True.
Unfortunately,
Actually, you're
I
right.
haven't seen any of his movies recently, so I can't pick
Casino
anything
Royale
out.
had a really good romance.
That's true.
GoldenEye had a good romance.
Oh, what
Casino
I
Royale
will
was
say,
easily the best romance in a James Bond
Oh,
movie.
oh,
yeah.
by far.
And then they...
Nah, we don't need to talk about that.
from the
I
array
agree.
of
Well-
movies that were listed, it sounds like he's very good at switching gears as far as genre goes.
Yeah.
Like he's very comfortable moving into something different and trying something a little new.
Is this one of those directors, Reese? I think you've talked about this, where there's certain directors that are just kind of plug and chug directors that are competent. You know, if you need one, but you can't get a Spielberg.
The
you can't
journeyman
get a
director?
Yeah, journeyman director. You could just chug this guy in there.
I think he's a tier above that.
Okay.
But yeah, I would classify him as a journeyman in terms of like doesn't have a signature style. Although I could be corrected.
Well, it's a Z now.
Yeah. AJ, it sounded like you're trying to say something earlier. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that he's good at, especially, this Mask of Zorro and Casino Royale, just the introductory action defining a character.
Right.
We really get a sense of distilled Zorro from the introduction, of him in this action sequence. And then same thing with Casino Royale, the Daniel Craig version, that is one of the best just distilled James Bond as a character from that action, the opening parkour sequence and all that stuff. So he definitely has kind of a really grasp of his own tools and bringing characters to the screen to life.
Well, there's one similarity, the parkour nature of both of the, like this one's very swashbuckly parkour, but the other one's very much, I guess, Bourne Identity type parkour. But yeah, they're interesting. He's an interesting guy. I just, it's definitely a good director overall, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say so.
This movie stars Antonio Banderas at the height of his fame, or at least at the beginning of the height of his fame. I feel like he's a pretty much a top billed star at this point. Like, this is an Antonio Banderas movie. Anthony Hopkins, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Stuart Wilson, and Matt Lester. The movie is written by John Escow, Ted Elliott, and Terry Rossio. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, by the way, have come up a number of times on our show as writers.
Disney.
They did for the animated films.
And they did. So I think Prince of Egypt, what they were on. But Pirates of the Caribbean
Treasure
as well.
Planet, I think.
Pirates of the Caribbean as well. So yeah, I mean, they know their swashbuckly action type adventure stuff. It makes sense that they're here. They might have even done something else that we covered. I'm just not thinking of it.
I think they produced, or they were at least involved in Aladdin.
Aladdin.
okay.
Oh yeah. So these guys like really got around in the late 90s, early, or at least all throughout the 90s and into the 2000s.
Road to El Dorado, yeah.
The story by, again, Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio, and Randall Johnson. And the movie is based on the character of the masked vigilante Zorro, created by Johnston McCulley.
Yeah.
Which I knew Zorro was based off books or whatever. It seems like it's similar to like the Hardy Boys, where there's just like tons of Zorro stories.
Yeah.
But there's also a ton of movies. Like I think there's 40 plus Zorro
Which
movies.
is crazy because up until the new one, I mean, that was out of the public eye for a while.
Yeah, and first movie, The Mark of Zorro, 1920.
Wow.
movie. Yeah, redefined filmmaking at the
Silent.
time. Silent
Yeah.
movie. One of the redefined swashbuckling adventure, or genre defined, or
Yeah.
arguably kind of kicked off the whole swashbuckling
This
thing.
is kind of bringing me back to our episode on Pirates of the Caribbean, where they had sort of a similar influence in that fact that it was the way the choreography is done, the way the film is sort of set up, does kind of echo the past. There are times while watching this movie now that I can almost see it in black and white without sound or
Yeah.
without people talking,
Yeah.
and I can tell
Still
exactly
know
what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the acting is through physicality as well as
Exactly.
vocals. Like you could almost see this
It
in
feels-
silent with just this fanfare playing and the
Feels
subtitles.
instantly classic. The sets, the cinemascope, the aspect ratio, and the framing of shots. I mean, matte paintings in the background.
Yeah.
It feels grandiose.
Yeah. AJ, did you get a chance to watch any of the older movies or do any of that research? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I've seen them before. Probably the one I'm most familiar with is actually the 1940 remake of The Mask of Zorro. Excuse me, The Mark of Zorro. I've seen the 1920, the silent version, which is also very influential, like you said.
That has to be
And
one
then
of the
there was a
earliest remakes ever. 1940, The Mark of
Yeah.
Zorro. It's a remake.
Yeah, the 1940 remake.
Yeah. There was a Disney series as well, which was actually brought the character into quite a bit of popularity as well.
Interesting. And
And I think, was it Fairbanks of the 1920? I mean, he defined the swashbuckler on film, essentially.
do
And
they
the
hold
character
up?
is actually based on, the 1940 version is actually, I would recommend watching it any day as well,
Yeah,
in conjunction to this, because this movie, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, pays a lot of homage to the 1940 version, of course, the 1920, as well as doing new things. But it definitely is a good classic film that holds up for the most part.
So, can I feel like going into this, we should also maybe give some backstory on the historical, side of it, which apparently he was a real person that it was based on.
Yeah, I read that. I was like, what?
So I have an article
Yeah.
here, and,
Noah's
as long as you're
Well-
okay, I can read it out.
Yeah. What you got,
Should
AJ?
we actually do our first segment of the podcast before we deep dive into everything like this?
Up to you. I just figured that, if we wanted to get facts out before we talk about the plot, but up to you.
I'm fine with either.
Well, here, how about
Delete or whatever.
let's do best of both worlds. David, give us the spark notes, and when we get to it, AJ can give us a deep dive on this character. And if it doesn't fit,
Okay.
if your version
Yeah,
doesn't fit for whatever reason, I'll streamline it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So Zorro is actually based on a real life figure. So they were basing it off of, let's see if I can just get the actual names real quick.
Joaquin Murrieta.
Yeah, Joaquin Murrieta, and also Three Finger Jack, who was actually a real person as well. They were active bandits
And the Murrieta gang.
in Northern California in 1849, roughly. And they actually went on trades and, and I'm trying to give the Spark Notes version after just barely reading this. But long story short,
Tirades?
yeah, I don't know, man.
Ty-
Long story short, Captain Harry Love, who is in this, the actual Confederate-looking soldier, kills Murrieta and puts his head in a jar, supposedly, and that's where a
Interesting.
lot of the influence comes from. The character's name is Murrieta in this, so based off of the real person, whereas you have Anthony Hopkins' character going off of the original name of the movie Zorro. So you kind of get both worlds in this, so it's kind of cool.
So Banderas' character is Alejandro. His brother that got killed is Joaquin.
yeah.
So they did a
Interesting.
twist there where
Both Murrieta,
the actual Joaquin Murrieta is the brother in this, and Alejandro is the one that takes up the mantle in the movie. There's historicity to this, and this is what I liked about this this kind of theme that I was going for, with starting with Robin Hood, which is kind of based in actual people or actual events and figures and stuff. And here again, Zorro's compared to Robin Hood, or Robin Hood of the West, almost kind of historical context that's become legend.
Yeah.
And entered in the popular culture and pervaded it, and people don't lose sight of the original kind of foundation of it.
Yeah, and to enlighten our audiences who may not have listened to previous episodes, this is part of your mini series of hoods from different hoods. So the we started off with the first 3 Robin Hood movies, and now we're into Zorro. But I never thought about it, knowing your miniseries until now, that both Robin Hood and Zorro are characters that are highly fantasized and elaborated upon, an actual figure that may or may not have existed.
No, he existed.
He existed. Well, same with Robin Hood, though, but how close is this? True.
Right, exactly.
The deeds that are, embellished over time and retold and become part of this
legend.
The legend.
Yeah.
Is the best way of saying it. Like Three Finger Jack, like David said, was an actual member of the gang. And, it goes back to, the Spanish War for Independence against Spain, or excuse me, the Mexican War for Independence, Spanish-American War, the 49, Gold Rush 49, all that stuff. This is all contextualized within this kind of legendary swashbuckling film that's adventurous, and it's got all these bits and pieces you can pick up, or if you don't, care to know about any of that, it stands on its own without all that. But, Zorro himself, maybe older generations than us might be more familiar, but it was kind of rebooted with this film we're talking about now. But Zorro, the character, he was a Pulp Fiction, adventure, serial, almost, comic book kind of thing that just was so successful. It was actually wasn't the first, but it was very close to being the first and very influential of, what we have received now, for superheroes, the masked identity, the alter ego.
Yeah.
I think the Scarlet Pimpernel was probably the prototypical, the first alter ego of this millionaire playboy. Pimpernel, thank you. And Zorro comes directly after that.
Interesting.
And literally, Batman is cited as being heavily influenced by Zorro, the character.
That makes sense.
Having this rich Bruce Wayne figure.
Yeah.
That's he's affluent and all this stuff, but then fights by night, literally, like the Murrieta gang did.
Has
to
caves
avenge
in his house.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. All these things. The dark.
Wears a mask.
Brass. Yeah. Like all the just the masked identity to be able to accomplish other things and disappearing in the night, just randomly appearing. All these things trace back to you'd never put 2 and 2 together with Batman and Zorro for a lot of people now, but
it makes sense.
Black Horse.
Honestly,
well, there's a reference.
It's true. That is the thing.
There's a reference in Joker where one of the movies playing in the background is Zorro and the Gay Blade, which is one of the Zorro movies.
Frank Miller definitely. He said there's references in the Dark Knight series. Yeah, there's a lot.
I think Zorro might be one of the coolest, for the people masked vigilantes out there. I mean, he has everything that I want from Batman and more. And this movie, I would argue, provides even more than that. And we'll get to when we get to the story portion for me. But this is a really cool historical movie.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing that is so, great about the depth of this character. On the surface, you have, everybody kind of knows what Robin Hood is conceptually. Steal from the rich, give to the poor.
Right.
How does that translate to Zorro? Okay, well, this Murrieta, person in real life, he was almost became more of a vengeful spirit than a, benefactor or something like that. But until you put yourself in the shoes of the people at the time, the downtrodden, the impoverished people, the Mexican and indigenous people at the time, over, the European Anglo, oppressors, that Zorro was fighting for that. So this is what I like to do with this series, is shifting the cultural perspective,
right? Putting
this lens on this particular trope and legend, and kind of moving it around and allowing us to kind of see that from different facets.
Right.
And so we see that, Batman, he started this because his, parents were murdered. Murrieta, his wife, was murdered. Like, he found gold before the big rush of 48, 49. And then all the indigenous people in Alta California, their rights were stripped away from, basically, like how the movie kind of describes, like stealing this gold to give to, the people that are in power, to just support their own power. And Zorro was an act of super judicial justice.
Yeah.
Just like Robin Hood was against the king and the monarchy for, the forestry land that's, was seeded from, the actual people working the land and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very discussion provoking once you want to find that, because it's actual history in a lot of elements. So
And we will
that's a big tangent.
and we will
No,
seek.
that's fine.
Yeah, we will seek to find it in this throughout the story portion of this episode. And feel free to steer us in that direction throughout the story portion, AJ, as much as you see fit.
Yeah.
Guide the conversation if you need to.
But on a superficial level, just to kind of bring some brevity or levity back to it, pardon me. My first experience with Zorro was this movie. I remember seeing this, together with the family. It came out on at home media, VHS, whatever. Watching it because it was adventurous swashbuckling, but still, somewhat kid friendly, or, younger person friendly.
Definitely.
Before you get gratuitous gore and sex and violence. I mean, it's violent, and there's, risque elements to it, but it's still mostly family oriented.
May have been
And even someone viewing this just from an action film can enjoy themselves that way.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll just get this out of the way real quick. For those that are new to this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis of the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So AJ, you were widely familiar with, or your introduction to Zorro was with this film, and that kind of sparked that deeper dive into Zorro as a character and his origins and how that became, all that history and whatnot. But Irina, had you seen The Mask of Zorro before this episode?
Absolutely. This is one of those movies I feel like, did we actually own it? I feel like there was a
Yeah.
while we didn't, though.
I had this on DVD.
Okay.
We had this.
I think before DVD, though, it was something I remember renting it as, from Blockbuster or
probably
something.
Hollywood
Because
Video.
we didn't see it as frequently as other movies, but we loved it. So when I got to see it, it felt like a special treat. So I don't remember the first time, obviously, because I was too young to remember. But
Same.
it's one of those movies that has been... there are so many that have sort of like constructed who I am over time and sort of influenced that side. And this is one of many that inspired the sort of pageantry I have and love of masked characters as being sort of an embodiment
That is
of...
kind of a trend for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
and
yeah.
it's...
I
I think because in every representation of them, there's an element of actually being who you want to be and saying what you want to say that you don't normally feel you have the capacity to. So there's something appealing about those characters as being above the normal standards of society or the law or whatever. And so this representation of Zorro is definitely a captivating one, and it was since I was young, so that's my history with it.
Awesome. Noah, how about you?
Probably about the same as Irina, to be quite frank.
No, you're Noah.
Yeah. No, I actually do not remember my first time watching this because
You're probably only like 3 years old.
you guys know. Yeah. I was 3 when this movie came out.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I remember. I just like it.
Well, I
I
think
liked it.
David, had you seen The Mask of Zorro before this episode?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
This
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
okay. Well, I was getting there.
Talk about an awakening. Something he said earlier.
I did say that
today.
I think I said it twice.
I think you also said that for Atlantis.
I think I did, and it's kind of weird that you remember that. I don't know why you remember that when I didn't, but
Because it's a unique one to have an awakening to.
No,
That's
that not really, honestly. That girl is super curvy.
I stand by it. The ones that I'm watching, the Awakenings, it makes sense.
Anyway,
Awakenings?
All right. So my first time watching this was probably early 2000s after it came out. And I think my dad had already seen it, and I was just old enough where he's like, okay, you can watch this. And it was probably on TV back when they had so many movies on like TBS and stuff. Dinner and a movie. They would show you how, like, I learned how to make steaks from watching that as a kid. And I just remember falling in love with this movie. And again, yes, the Catherine Zeta-Jones scene where they slice the dress off. Yes, that was great. As a kid, I was like, wait a second. Wait a second.
First time you press that pause button.
That?
You can't do that on the TV back then. And, I just remember that being a moment where I paused and I was like, I paused.
That's the moment you decide to reference when you talked about loving this movie.
I remember it.
Look,
Yeah.
I think
was a
all the
memory.
guys know.
But I will say I just loved everything about this movie, and in a similar vein, when it comes to Princess Bride, where as a kid things are heightened. Yeah. So in this movie, there's humor. There's a little bit of almost Jackie Chan style choreography, where things are obviously not super real. But as a kid, I remembered it being so much more. Same thing with Princess Bride, where it's like, I didn't realize there was comedy. Like, it went over my head. But the swashbuckling, the fighting, like the way they did these scenes was so much more intense. And so it was one of the biggest things for me as a kid, where I'm like, I can watch this. There's nobody being gratuitously murdered. There is some, different ways, not bloody.
Yeah.
And
forget about the head floating in the jar.
Yeah, and people being shot in the air twice. So the fact is, I just remember this being a really impactful movie, probably one of my favorites as a kid. I was excited when I heard that we were going to watch it.
You know what? You know what's one of those insane things to me? Putting into perspective that this came out, 6 years prior to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They're like a swashbuckler.
That's
only
so
6
weird.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't that
that's
crazy?
weird.
Because at the time,
Only 5, actually.
At the time,
it feels
right.
like
that
a
was
decade apart.
Yeah, at the time there was a
Yeah.
huge amount of, like, in my head it was like, oh wow, that was that long
Time
ago.
was slow when we were
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
But now you're like, 6 years ago? Like 6 years
Yeah.
ago for me right now would be, 21.
Yeah,
and,
right.
For everyone else, too.
and 21 to me feels like, that was last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
What about you,
it's weird.
Reese?
Yeah, I'd seen this. I owned the DVD. I don't know if I actually saw it in theaters. I might have. It might have been a theatrical, one of those when parents took.
That was the
to
same year
movies.
as Titanic for you.
Yeah, I probably did see it in the theaters.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I will say, though, when we were young, we weren't really taken to the theater that much.
No, it was
It
like
was usually
a few
DVDs
times a
were
year. It
brought
was a
to
few
us.
times a year. We would go a few times a
And
year.
The Mask of Zorro is a big movie.
I remember going to the theater felt like a treat.
Yeah.
And when we did, it would happen a few times a year. Again, though, I'm going to come back to
Yeah.
your perspective on time.
Yeah.
Where we probably went
Yeah.
more than you think. It just since you were young,
maybe.
it felt so.
Yeah, 5 times
well,
a year felt
well,
like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point,
Yeah.
actually.
So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this was a theatrical viewing, and I do remember owning the DVD, upgraded to Blu-ray a while back. I loved this movie. I didn't rewatch it all that much though, which is weird. Like it's such a rewatchable movie now that we're seeing it again here.
Okay.
But I hadn't seen this in a while.
I stand by not rewatching things that are really good because, the more you have of a thing, as good as it is, you'll start to take it for granted.
Would you take back some of your Lord of the Rings watches?
I very rarely watch Lord of the Rings deliberately so that I may...
clarify for the audience. That's like 2 times a year.
I watch it maybe once a year. Yeah, I do.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
We do need to get.
It's hard to spend 4 hours.
Yeah, we need to move to the story here.
We're having fun.
Spinning our wheels. But yeah, I had seen it. Really liked the movie. Was excited to watch it again. Weird that I hadn't seen it more often in the years past. So, AJ, you want to give us that story?
Some say he's a legend.
Zorro was a servant of the people. He did what was needed.
Now he's needed again.
Others, a ghost.
Be careful, senorita. There are dangerous men about.
Some say he fights for justice.
There are some who would call him heroic.
Others for revenge.
All that playing with swords, shooting guns. racing around on horses. Such sweaty pursuits are hardly the work of a gentleman.
No one has seen his face.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I had impure thoughts about a man.
Lustful?
Yes, lustful.
But everyone knows his mark.
Not bad.
The only sin would be to deny what your heart truly feels. Not bad at all.
Search everything!
You know, Zorro, he could be anywhere. Did you miss me?
It's only one man. It isn't just one man, damn it. It's Zorro.
In 1821, Don Diego de la Vega, a Spanish-born California nobleman, fights against the Spanish in the Mexican War of Independence as Zorro, a mysterious masked swordsman who defends the Mexican peasants and commoners of Las Californias. Don Rafael Montero, the corrupt governor of the region, sets a trap for Zorro at a public execution of 3 innocent peasants. Zorro stops the execution, and Montero's soldiers are thwarted by 2 young brothers, Alejandro and Joaquin Murrieta. Zorro fights the remaining Spanish soldiers and thanks the Murrieta brothers by giving Joaquin a silver medallion. Don Montero suspects De La Vega of being Zorro and attempts to arrest him at his home. A sword fight begins, a fire breaks out, and De La Vega's wife Esperanza, whom Montero held unrequited love for, is shot and killed during the ensuing scuffle. While Diego's home burns, Montero takes his infant daughter Elena as his own before sending De La Vega to his prison and returning to Spain. In 1841, Alejandro and Joaquin are bandits, running a scam with Three-Fingered Jack to collect the bounty on their heads and steal a strongbox. Before they can escape with the money, they are caught by Captain Harrison Love, Montero's new American right-hand man. Jack and Joaquin are captured while Alejandro escapes, and Joaquin shoots himself rather than be executed by Captain Love. Love then beheads Joaquin's corpse and takes the head. Montero returns to California as a civilian alongside Elena, who has grown into a beautiful woman and resembles her late mother. Montero's reappearance motivates De La Vega to escape from prison. He encounters Alejandro getting drunk and recognizes the silver medallion he gave his brother as a boy. De La Vega learns that Murrieta is on a similar quest for vengeance on Captain Love for his brother's death and agrees to make Alejandro his protege, recruiting him to be the new Zorro. Alejandro agrees to undergo De La Vega's training and his training regimen in Zorro's secret cave underneath the ruins of his family estate to be able to take revenge.
Movie opens on the walk-in Zorro side swipe Z formation. Then we get our opening sequence with a bunch of prisoners. There's like a riot in the streets, protests, I mean, and there's some prisoners about to be executed by Montero, and about 3 or 4, 5 maybe people that are about to be hung. Yeah, so there's 2 kids kind of observing what's happening. Alejandro Murrieta, as you said, and his friend, or I think it's his brother.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And just in the nick of time before these people are about to be executed, Zorro makes an appearance. The Anthony Hopkins, Don Diego de la Vega Zorro, and thwarts the execution and gives Don Rafael Montero a nice little scar on the neck. And also, the kids help him out. He notices that. And that's kind of the big opening to this movie as he kind of runs off, and we have the James Horner score blaring, and it's all like romantic.
Well, don't forget, he gives
action-packed.
the kids a medallion.
He gives them a medallion. But that's kind of the opening salvo of this movie. Do you think it establishes everything pretty well, and are you enjoying yourselves?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Horner's always been a personal favorite as far as music goes. So I mean, there's definitely no complaints there. The opening scene we kind of talked about a little bit, but it really establishes this Zorro as a character, whether it's Hopkins or Banderas behind the mask. The Zorro legend is established in this fight. The swashbuckling, the action, the literal rearing horse, silhouetted against the setting sun. All those things are just larger than life, but iconic. Also setting this sense of scale right off the bat too. You have this, rebellion of the lower class that are, huddling, and the filmography here as well. The framing shots, the lighting is so great. This is one of the better renders, or excuse me, remasters on 4K as well. Just throwing that out there. It looks really good in Dolby Vision, but the lighting is excellent. I almost harken back to something like Evita or something, where this pervasive sense of rebellion of this nation. This is a world. This is not just this bottle, ship in a bottle kind of thing where you're looking at something microscopically. This feels like a large national event going on, and this is a national figure that Zorro is, even though of course it's not quite that broad, but it feels grandiose.
All eyes are on him.
Well, you hear people talking about his name in the background. They're like, hey, Zorro, he might show up.
Yeah, he's a legend, and then he becomes an urban legend type thing.
Well, and I was bringing this up to Reese before we started, but what I love about this movie and this
Zorro, I guess.
This intro is you get to have your cake and eat it too, because who doesn't love an origin story? And this movie is an origin story, but you get to see Zorro in action right off the bat. You get to see two Zorros. Zorro in his prime doing one of his biggest moments, and then
Zorro in his prime doing one of his biggest moments.
Exactly. And so that's what I'm saying. You get to have so much fun with this movie because you get to get an origin story, but also enjoy right off the bat. Right. It's so exciting.
Yes.
The thing I like about watching this intro as an adult versus a kid is the difference in perspective of Alejandro, where he, as a child watching this, I'm kind of seeing it the way he is. Yeah. Where there are people about to die, but he's more excited about possibly seeing Zorro.
Yeah.
So there's not, as a kid, you're not really thinking about the threat of death or what that implies or what the situation is entirely. You do have an idea of it, but there is that looking to the hero, looking to this cool guy who's like, oh yeah, they fight the bad guys and everything feels so obvious and almost kind of like a play before your eyes. And as you watch the movie, he sort of takes that role on in that way, sort of in that childish perspective, but it changes as the stakes for him rise. So I love how in this intro it feels like Zorro is a little more of a pageantry figure. The way he's running around, it almost feels staged, but that's kind of like how the children see him.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it feels like it grows in intensity as far as no, what does that actually mean though for the people? So I like this intro versus where the character goes.
And here, pretty much right after that, we get into our as AJ was saying, our Batman comparisons. Once Zorro retreats back to his manor, we see that, this guy is kind of probably a well-known rich public figure who, he's not living in a secret cave or anything.
A wealthy aristocrat, I would say.
He does probably have a bat cave under there, which we do learn
he does
later. But it's like a manor. He lives at a manor, and he's got a wife and a kid, and this is quickly... It looks like man, I hate how bad I am with names, but just bear with me here.
Esperanza de la Vega?
No, I just need to have this page constantly on so I don't mess it up. But Don Rafael Montero figures out who he is, arrives at his doorstep. His wife is accidentally killed as she's trying to protect him from being shot by one of the guards. I do like the moment where Montero is like, I loved her, and he stabs the guy dead.
I love the complexity
yeah.
of that.
That was
Also-
good. Yeah.
One thing I don't miss about movies is where someone would stab someone, maybe makes it 3 inches into their stomach, and they fall down instantly dead. I'm
Yeah.
like, whatever. That's the swashbuckling action.
I think
that's
I'm
fine.
even more bothered by like those scenes where, someone's pushed down the stairs a little bit, they stumble and they're like, I'm
out for the count.
Yeah, I'm out, guys. One fault, my hips. Yeah.
My hips.
And I've already used my cue. I gotta wait 15 seconds for my refresh.
No,
That's the smallest of nitpicks. I'm not dinging the
Yeah,
movie
yeah.
for
No,
that,
you're right.
but it's just kind of funny.
but that kind of fits with the style of the movie as
Yeah,
far as
exactly.
that goes. Like, it makes sense. It's canon.
I think we should also bring up in this the fact that this movie is a romance. And whether or not we have it with Diego or if we have it with, Alejandro.
Yeah, look at us with our names.
Yeah, I have it open right here.
Yeah.
But they both have the romances, but it starts here with him and Esperanza. And I just think it's so well set up with the baby and the bassinet and everything. You can feel the love and learning that the villain is also in love with his wife and the complications. But this sets up one of the best lines, I think, in the movie, which is very early to say. But
Oh, it's good.
But the part where he accidentally shoots the wife and he goes, I would have never let any harm come to her. And Diego's like, she was never yours to protect.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that is such a good line.
Yeah, that was a good line. A lot of good writing in this movie.
Well, the thing I like too about it is that there's so much class in the way he says it too.
Yeah.
Zorro.
She was never yours to protect.
Yeah, he's not like viciously angry, outraged, fight back.
Oh,
he
it's
was just like
inner rage.
He made a very pointed comment,
Yeah.
and it was good.
And so he imprisons Zorro, which I was kind of surprised. I thought you would kill someone like that, but
he wanted him to suffer more by being alive, knowing that he had his daughter.
Yeah, it's just like that's gonna come around to bite you. I'm pretty sure.
No way.
Yeah. So Manor's burning. AJ, did you have any thoughts on this scene before we press on?
Well, I mean, we set up, the antagonist here. We have two pairings. We have the original Zorro, Hopkins, and Hopkins obviously not ethnically appropriate per se, with this, but I think excellent. I mean, excellent casting choice because he's sets the standard for the chivalry, the class.
Yeah.
Where Zorro or De La Vega and some of the older ones, his alter ego of the nobleman, he acts like a fop. He's just like superficial, only cares about looks and this stuff. But here we already see that, that person you can be, I think he was like the Zorro, or excuse me, De La Vega is like the wealthiest landowner in the area. So, you kind of have this quandary of, hypocrisy with, the wealthy class, but, you have all these impoverished people here. But, there's I guess the better hearted of the wealthy, and De La Vega embodies that. Like it's true caring, and he tries to be a good person. And in this short little scene we see with his wife and his daughter, and how he interacts with, the people around him. And Hopkins does great in his delivery and just sets that tone so well that, adds that complexity of character instead of just the kind of the ruffian that Alejandro brings, and the fun, the more swashbuckling that is really riffed on, lends itself to, look back at Robin Hood. We have the Locksley kind of nobleman status, but also the woodsman, the merry men, that duality as well. So Montero here as well. Actually, I think this is a great improvement this movie does over, say the 20 and the 40 versions of the Mark of Zorro, where Montero's almost more mustachioed, twirling, not quite as inane, but definitely not as deep of an antagonist. There it's just more like almost pure action against this greedy guy.
Right.
This guy is actually malicious here in this movie, and I think that's a great improvement, is having this deep villain and rivalry right off the bat.
I will also say, as much as I like him, also not ethnically appropriate for the role.
I was going to say we'd be amiss to not bring up the fact that this is a very whitewashed cast, but not to say that they are not amazing.
At least we have Antonio Banderas in there as the lead.
Sort of. He's Spanish, not Mexican.
I give him a pass for that. Okay,
Okay, well, I also think there wasn't any, deliberate kind of like, nah, you can't cast any, ethnic people in this film.
I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that they didn't try to find people.
I will say originally for the role, the Anthony Hopkins role, also in the running at the time was Sean Connery and Raul Julia.
Wait, Raul Julia, I know that name.
Adam's Family.
Glad they didn't go with Sean Connery.
Yeah. Why was he up for every wise man role at
Big
this
name.
time?
Yeah,
remember
like
this is
Gandalf
still
too.
the time where names are big. Names are powerful.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Mexican Sean Connery, though? He's like, come on, De La Vega. Get down there and we will work on it.
I guess it worked in Highlander.
Yeah, I mean, just look at we had this conversation with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, names were big.
Yeah.
And more. I mean, again, with the whitewashing conversation, it's something that's continually improving.
Right. Yeah.
It's continual growth and diversification, and just everybody's exposed to more variety and stuff. So, I don't particularly, find it at fault with this.
No.
Yeah.
It's just,
I will also...
worth.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think there's just also a lot to be said about, what the expectations were at the time, and, people just probably didn't even think about it. Mm-hmm. They're just like, let's do a casting for this. This guy, okay, he's good.
Well, I will say, though, because of a mixture of what you're saying, but with what AJ was saying, where you have prominent actors that people know, so they just kind of threw him in there. But
that too.
Catherine Zeta-Jones wasn't known at this time. This was her big breakout role. And even a lot of Hispanic audiences, Mexican audiences, believed that she was actually Mexican. And for the longest time, actually, even when we were watching this, Irina's like, she's got to be a little bit Latin in there, right? And we looked it up.
She's Welsh.
Yeah. She's Welsh.
And I also do want to point out that though there is some whitewashing, it is very clear that the white man is the evil one. Like
you're right, and as it should be in this kind of movie.
Exactly. That's the point that I'm making.
I think with this movie, it is a non-issue.
Yeah,
it's not a point of controversy, really. I don't think.
I just think it was good to touch on.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to years past. We see Antonio Banderas. Man, dang it! I gotta get this character again.
Alejandro.
Alejandro. I'm just gonna
just call him Zorro.
No, I'm not. He's not Zorro yet. I can't
there
call him.
There are two Zorros, so it makes it
Zorro 1 and 2.
My brain just the way it functions. It's bad.
It's fine.
But we have Alejandro and his brother. They're tied up behind that
three-fingered Jack.
Yeah, three-fingered Jack. They kind of go. You get the idea, the sense that they go from kind of town to town. They're kind of the two behind them are wanted, but almost like intentionally wanted, so that they can kind of pick up bounties from dumb, unsuspecting people in each village. So they kind of have a con going, and when they figure out like how much they're worth, they're like, no, only this.
So good.
So they're like willingly doing it.
It's a little Miguel and Tulio.
Yeah, actually,
before Miguel and Tulio.
Yeah.
Well. Actually, if we're going chronologically, just based on the time period they're in, Miguel and Tulio would be first.
But we're talking like when the movies came out.
Pointless debate.
So we get a sense at what their operation is, and then they come across some real danger in the form of Joy, or I think that's his last name.
Love.
Just call him
Joy and Love.
Yeah, same thing. Love, played by, let's get his name here.
This guy is way too good at being an a-hole.
Matt Lesher.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he plays Captain Harrison Love. Matt Lesher. I don't know what was wrong with me as a kid, but I liked this guy's vibe as a villain.
He's a great villain.
I do not stand for anything he does, but for whatever reason, anytime this guy was on the screen, I was like, that's a cool villain.
There's something about him that's like way too cool and chill. With the
he's a serial killer
that surrounds him.
Irina said that too. She said like we were watching it and she's like, he's a sociopath.
No, he's sadistic as well. The fact that he would just so he kills his brother or Alejandro's brother, and cuts his head off, puts it in a pickle jar, and just keeps it.
Yeah.
Like, just, that is
We learned
serial
that
killer
later,
stuff.
but-
It makes
you know?
you wonder how many of those jars he has.
He's renting a storage
Here's my
unit.
collection.
Just has a bunch of jars.
Yeah.
No, there's
Yeah,
it's,
so-
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say historical context here. You know, you have the California Rangers. I mean, this is the Wild West. It is called the Wild West for a reason. It's lawless. This is in, you know, the governments can't keep tight control on everywhere. So the law, you know, you have bandits and stuff, and the Murrieta band in history, they call in the cavalry, the Rangers, when there's something especially bad or especially, you know, like really pressing, because otherwise it's just like, you know, the Wild West. Stuff happens. People have their own justice, or, you know, take care of themselves or whatnot, or just gets let slide certain things. So the fact that you have the captain of the cavalry here, the Rangers, I mean, he is the military presence embodied in this guy.
Also based off a
You know,
real
he
person.
Harry Love was the actual captain of the Rangers, the cavalry.
Head of California's first statewide law enforcement agency.
Yeah. So like just their involvement in law and order is like a force to be reckoned, you know, in and of itself, and he is the head of that. So when they're judge, jury, and executioner, kind of, they're, you know, that's what they become.
So is this our Sheriff of Nottingham?
Kind of.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Love this performance, though. He very much reminds me of that actor Corey Stoll from
Terminator.
He's from House of Cards, and he plays the Yellow Jacket in the Ant-Man movie.
Oh, I got it
the
mixed
bald-
up. Sorry,
the
I
bald
thought
guy.
Nick Stoll or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Very similar face, but just add hair.
Yeah. I don't see it, but I respect it.
I'll show you a picture, and
I
you
saw
will see
the
it.
picture you showed me earlier.
You'll see it, and you'll agree with me. But yeah, we have that kind of establishes our two. This movie is so efficient, by the way. It establishes our two hero and villain tracks. So we have the original Zorro, who very much has a vendetta against
Don Raphael.
Don Raphael, yes. And then we instantly see this other character who did know. We soon find out he did know the original Zorro. He's the one that got the that little necklace from him. But his brother is killed by the person working directly under
The Don. Yeah.
Captain Love.
Yeah, I'm doing a great job of this. Sorry. I'm trying my best. But real efficient storytelling. This movie's so smart in how it just mirrors our characters here, and they both have similar but yet different goals, and they both are seeking vengeance, and they both but from different sides of the spectrum. He's like a bandit, and Zorro is not.
And very structurally, very important thing too is Elena, because Zorro de la Vega kind of leaves. He lets himself go. You know, he's captured. He's beaten, defeated as his daughter is taken, and his daughter returns to the scene. We have the introduction of the next generation, Alejandro and Love, their story, and Elena is the one that ties them all together.
Yeah.
Yes. So all right. So at this point, we have the original Zorro kind of out and about town, sees the down on his luck Alejandro, who is drinking away his sorrows, and they kind of have an interaction. Sorry, it's been a couple days since I've seen this, so it's already...
He's about
So
to
basically-
pawn off the medallion that Zorro
Yes.
gave him, and then Zorro just happens to be there and sees it.
very coincidental.
Yeah, and then it's like, what are you doing with that? And so they kind of converse, and he realizes this is the kid that I gave the medallion to.
Yep. And
Stops him from giving it away, and then
takes him under his wing.
Also
kind of.
keeps him from running out to try to attack Captain Love and saves his life. So
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the assist.
I'm up there for the alley-oop, baby.
Yeah, fairly
tried.
coincidental, but I think this movie is why I'm okay with these coincidences and these 3-inch stabs in the stomachs, instantly deads, is because this movie is very aware of its tone. And I think this movie is slightly heightened, which is very smart. It is kind of, at times, almost verging on a comedy. There's comedic bits throughout the film. I will never call this a comedy.
In the same way Pirates of the Caribbean is a comedy.
Well,
No, exactly.
Pirates
just
has a lot
part of the nature of a swashbuckler.
to do with this
exactly.
Yeah, I will never call
It
this a
wouldn't
comedy.
exist
It is
without
a action adventure swashbuckler, and then way off in the distance comedy.
I think
Like-
it's an addition of charm.
Yeah.
Like there are movies that are charming.
Yeah.
Along with being adventurous and action oriented.
Yeah.
You also have to, you're thinking somewhat, I don't want to say anachronistically, but, we are more and more used to and expect realism,
Yeah.
especially in violence.
Yeah.
Now, especially in movies and TV shows. I mean, the production value of violence in particular has gotten so real that we are, more desensitized to it. We expect it. It is mandatory, for something like that. Whereas, before this was an entertainment medium.
Yeah.
We understand, we don't need to see them completely eviscerated.
Right.
We understand that they're dead.
It's like
That's just part of the story, the production, the play.
when you're watching it, it's more like a dance than it is a realistic scenario. A dance is just as entertaining in a different way.
Which we see back to back in this movie between dances and sword fighting.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it does have this movie does have almost a musical quality to it, even when there's not music.
I would argue that a lot of that sword fighting that feels like dancing can be attributed to Bob Anderson, who is the sword master, which I love as a title for a movie. Sword master. Yeah. And let me see. So he is the sword master, but he has done so many movies that we know. He's done everything from Star Wars to all of the Lord of the Rings movies. But he did The Legend of Zorro. He did The Mask of Zorro. He did Pirates of the Caribbean. He did Die Another Day. He did
Princess Bride.
He did all of these movies. And if you think about it, you could see it.
You said Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
So he's like the Andy Serkis of swords.
Yeah, he just shows up and they're like, we need help. And they're like, all right.
But when you think about all those movies, you're like, yeah, there is a bit of a similarity between like the way they handle
It's the dance of the
swords.
swords.
Is this where we leave off in the story, or did you go further than this?
I introduced everybody, including Elena. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about Catherine Zeta-Jones or not.
So
let's talk
I
about
didn't.
her.
Well, the thing is, we get our kind of a bit of a training montage before we're.
Yeah.
Oh, we kind of see her, but we don't actually get much of her character until later. But yeah,
She smells a flower.
let's get her. Let's get her out of the way.
It's basically the next paragraph, but I don't want to. The next paragraph also kind of leads into the rest of the plot. So
Yeah, that's fine. Let's talk. All right, so let's talk about Catherine Zeta-Jones. I said Jones. Catherine Zeta-Jones as Elena.
I absolutely love her. I think
Me too.
as an actress, like there's not much at this point to really write about on paper as far as screenplay goes exactly, but there is something about her inherently where when you see her acting, you feel like there's a little more behind the eyes than just I'm just looking pretty.
Okay,
you know,
you slightly touched on it. There's something that they're doing really well with like both her and Antonio's eyes. I don't know
like
what
kind
it
of
is.
like a focusing in
There's
on
a framing.
Like,
It's a cinematographer framing thing. But
and it's just the way that they're acting too.
Yeah.
Like the use of their eyes to like send different messages is so good.
I also don't quote me on this, but I was watching a video that said that they were both rated the #1 most sexy people alive of that year.
Everyone was watching. Everyone was watching Zorro.
So I'm just saying, I don't know if that's true, but if it is,
It was
that
true
might
at the time.
also be why.
It's something about the way she carries herself, I think, where
She has a lot of charisma.
in her first scene, she's just, you immediately are drawn to her.
Yeah.
not just because she's beautiful, which she is, but there's something about the way she carries herself where she very much seems like an elite. Like, she seems like she belongs in the upper class.
And she's like gracefully feisty.
Yeah, exactly.
Gracefully feisty. I like
No,
that.
yeah, I think, and we'll talk about this later, but she does a very good job of carrying the, I have an opinion on things, but I'm constantly being kind of disregarded or, looked down on for my beliefs as being childish.
Yeah, like what was that line? What do women know of the world of politics?
Yeah, exactly. And she's constantly surrounded by that. She has no mother figure. She has no women in her life. So I think she does an excellent job kind of balancing, trying to be graceful, but also like retaliating in her own way.
Also, can I say another thing that this movie does, and I'm going to talk about how efficient this movie is, but with all you need for chemistry is actors that are very in sync in a dance scene.
Oh,
There you go.
That does a lot of work showing like, okay, there's chemistry here. If you can nail a dance together,
hold on. But even before the dance, their first interaction before he's full Zorro, like the second they look at each other, like, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
But that dance just seals the deal. Like, these guys are meant for each other.
No, that
like,
was definitely the ribbon on, like, that was the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's almost like, it's almost literally putting two puzzle pieces together, where it's like, oh, okay, if they can call and response perfectly in a dance, then it just like sends a lot of those natural chemistry signals.
It's almost like a metaphor for their sort of chemistry in the movie. Like, they can move together. They're in sync.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the biggest improvements over, like, say, the 1940 version, where Elena's character literally is, I wish I was pretty. Like, this is a huge difference. And she's a critical character in bonding, both the elder Zorro and the younger, and kind of the surrogate father aspect of it.
Yeah, she's the adhesive.
Her and Antonio, or Catherine Zeta-Jones and Antonio Banderas, and by extension their characters, I mean, what we've kind of picked up on, just to rephrase it, is the communication between them. They are so great at communicating non-verbally.
Yeah.
And there's almost a Leone-esque, focus on people's faces at certain scenes, and the storytelling of these characters through their faces and expressions before they even have this dance, and it sets the scene where they communicate, flirtatiously, but
With
they
those
are in
eyes,
sync,
man.
like we said. Yeah, just the slight mannerisms and nods, before they even have to say any words. And then you have this dance scene, which is mirrored from the earlier movies as well, but so much more better done here. And then how it affects Don Rafael and his, everything has ripple effects centered around Elena.
Yeah.
And Catherine Zeta-Jones has the poise and the stature to substantiate this character.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, as an earlier movie in the late 90s, I mean, she is a strong female character. She's not necessarily a damsel in distress. We even see later on, her sword fight against Zorro, himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is excellent. Yeah. Just having such a well-rounded cast, down to the quote-unquote damsel in distress, where she is a significant figure herself.
It's no wonder this came from the director of James Bond, because he nails, the charisma of the lead and the charisma of
the chemistry between the romance.
Their chemistry. It's just, I don't know. I think it's the perfect venue for this kind of movie that, what's the director's name again?
Martin Campbell.
Yeah. Martin Campbell. Yeah. It's perfect for him. This movie was like a beautiful, beautiful ham upon a silver platter.
I love that. I love that, with an apple in its mouth.
David, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just, this movie was also produced by Steven Spielberg's company.
Mm-hmm.
And
you say Spielberg?
Spielberg.
Spielberg.
Steve Spielberg.
Good old Spielberg.
Yeah.
And Stevie Spiels.
Yep.
And he was one of the main advocates that spoke up to get Catherine Zeta-Jones this job.
Good idea.
He was very impactful in getting that. And so
You know
She
how
was
many
the perfect-
14-year-old boys were happy?
I mean, I was one of them.
You weren't 14 yet.
I mean, I was at some point.
Fair enough.
And so when it came to her, she did not take it for granted. She studied, like she learned Spanish. She took horse riding lessons.
Yeah.
She learned how to actually fence.
Dancing?
She took dancing lessons. And so by the time this happened, she was ultra prepared. And no wonder that a lot of people were confused when they learned that she wasn't actually Hispanic or Latin in any way. But she also attributed a lot of the flair in her acting to her Celtic sort of fieriness.
That's cool.
So I think that's kind of cool.
No, I think,
You just wait just a second. You just unlocked a treasure trove of fun facts that I want to offload on you real quick before we move in. Do you want to know who else was slated to, or at least slated to be cast as Elena?
Yes.
So first up, Shakira.
No.
What?
But guess what?
Interesting.
But guess what? She declined the role because she didn't think she was talented enough to perform as the character.
lots of respect.
It's kind of sad.
So I got some. I had some just respect points earned to Shakira there for being the bigger person and being like, I don't know if I could do this. But
again, let's go look at the industry too.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Evita. That was, I think, 96, a couple
that
years
was
before this. I
Madonna,
mean, that was
right?
Madonna.
Yeah.
So I think, there's kind of this trend to try to pull, again, the big names.
And I did want to say something about this, though, that's funny. I love this movie, but there's so many other permutations of the people working in who were going to be in this movie that I would have been.
Sean Connery and Shakira.
Yeah, I thought to myself, like, that would be fine. Like, so the original, like, Spielberg considered directing this, and I've been, you know what? Steven Spielberg would have made a good version of this movie. And then it was passed on to Robert Rodriguez.
Whoa.
Who I would have been like,
what?
Yeah.
I would be like, yeah, I could see Robert Rodriguez doing a
That would
movie
be
like
a different
this.
movie, though.
And he
Mariachi.
and I think he had Salma Hayek as the Elena role.
She was
that could have been
Which
good.
I'm also like, yeah, I could have seen that.
Yes.
Like all the versions of I feel like they had their head in the right space for this movie,
Yeah.
even throughout the other options, which made me happy. The only thing I didn't agree was the Sean Connery. I'm like, why
that's
would,
out of left field.
But he was rumored to be cast in like everything, like Gandalf. I'm like, get Sean Connery out of your mouths right now. Like, we need to just move on.
Don't you know he's super expensive?
Yeah, but the funny thing about, and this is my last fun fact, the funny thing about Robert Rodriguez is they hired him on because they saw his work on El Mariachi and Desperado, and they were like, oh, this guy can get a movie done on a lower budget and get a lot out of that.
I didn't know he was on Desperado.
Yeah, he directed Desperado.
Oh.
But
It's a trilogy.
so they were like, hey, we want you to make Zorro on a $35 million budget. And he's like, I need at least $45 million to do this thing. And they're like, no, 41 million. Or they're like, no, 41 million. And he's like, no, I need at least 42. Like, so he came down to 42.
Come on.
And then they were like, nah, sorry, can't do it. So then they got Martin Campbell to direct it. And guess how much the budget turned out to be?
I'm going to guess more.
65.
60 to 65 million.
It had to be.
So I'm
like, I'm just looking at this movie,
It's
I'm
like-
like, there's more money
It's like
in
you
this.
doofuses. Like, it's just so funny.
They lucked out, though. I think.
Yeah.
I think.
They're not very good at gambling.
Yeah, but anyway, that I just want I wanted to rattle those off.
No,
real
I
quick
love
'cause it
that.
was
I
fun.
love facts like that.
But AJ,
I think
did
Andy
I
Garcia
step over
was
your-
up there too.
No way.
Wait, what?
Andy Garcia?
What?
I thought so.
As who?
Instead of Alejandro.
Oh my gosh. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro, Andy Garcia, Mark Anthony.
Benicio del Toro, I could see maybe, right?
At a younger age, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, AJ, did you want to close out do the second portion of the story?
Yeah. While still being trained, Alejandro steals a black stallion resembling Zorro's steed Tornado from the local garrison. De la Vega scolds Alejandro, claiming that Zorro was a servant of the people, not a thief and adventurer. He challenges Alejandro to gain Montero's trust instead. Alejandro poses as a visiting nobleman named Don Alejandro del Castillo y Garcia, with De la Vega as his servant Bernardo, and attends a party at Montero's hacienda. At the party, he earns Elena's admiration and enough of Montero's trust to be invited to a secret meeting where several other noblemen are present. Montero hints at a plan to retake California for the Dons and proclaim it as an independent republic by buying it from General Santa Anna, who needs money for the upcoming Mexican-American War. Montero takes Alejandro and the noblemen to a secret gold mine known as El Dorado, where peasants and prisoners are used for slave labor. Montero plans to buy California from Santa Anna using gold mined from Santa Anna's own land. As the servant Bernardo de la Vega uses this opportunity to become closer to Elena and learns that Montero told Elena that her mother died in childbirth. While walking in a market, Elena meets the woman who was her nanny, who tells Elena her parents' real identity. De la Vega sends Alejandro, now officially wearing the mantle of Zorro, to steal Montero's map leading to the gold mine. Zorro duels Montero, Love, and their guards at the hacienda. When Zorro escapes, Elena attempts to retrieve Montero's map from the swordsman. A brief sword duel ensues, but Zorro gives her a passionate kiss before he flees. Terrified of Santa Anna's retribution if he discovers he is being paid with his own gold, Montero decides to destroy the mine and kill the workers at Love's urging. De la Vega tells Alejandro to release the workers on his own so that De la Vega can reclaim Elena. Alejandro sets off, feeling betrayed by Diego's vendetta. De la Vega corners Montero at the hacienda and reveals his identity, but Montero captures him by threatening to shoot him in front of Elena. As he is taken away, De la Vega tells Elena that the name of the flowers, Romnea, that she recognized upon her arrival in California, thereby convincing her that he is her father. She releases De la Vega from his cell. They proceed to the mine where Alejandro and De la Vega respectively defeat and slay Love and Montero, avenging Joaquin and Esperanza. Elena and Alejandro free the workers before the explosives go off and find the mortally wounded De la Vega. He makes peace with Alejandro and Elena and gives his blessing for Alejandro continue as Zorro and to marry his daughter before dying. Sometime later, Alejandro and Elena are married. Alejandro tells stories to their infant son, Joaquin, whom he named after his brother, of his grandfather's heroic deeds and legacy as Zorro.
So we kind of glossed over it, but let's talk about the whole kind of training montage that we get and the kind of bonding of... I know we're just going to use the word bonding a lot in this, but the mentor-mentee...
Yeah.
Yes, the mentor-mentee relationship between old Zorro and new Zorro, and how he's kind of taken him under his wing, and we've got the Bat Cave, we're going to make it nicer, and just all this stuff, and then leading up to the infiltration of Don Diego de la Vega. Don Diego de la Vega, yep, close. That's a lot of... But how do we think about this whole section of the film?
So, first off, you have the kind of more adventure, Alejandro's first outing as Zorro, stealing the stallion, and he kind of first encounters Elena, and they have their spark. But, Zorro, the elder, scolds him and says, this is still about the people, not necessarily your own personal pride and gain.
Yeah.
But what's awesome about that is that's turned against him, where we see that Alejandro is taking that to heart. It's not just necessarily, going in one ear out the other. He's actually learning. This is a pretty abbreviated training.
Yeah.
Compared to today's origin stories and stuff.
Which I'm cool with.
So much is well done that the implicit nature of this and the abbreviated nature of it is it's successful.
Yeah.
We don't need to see every single... Yeah, we don't need to see a whole, musical... montage clips of him learning every single sword technique and fighting. Like, we get it.
Also, Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins have really good, rapport.
Yeah.
Just, back and forth.
You had a calm, cool, and chill character with a very fiery character.
And the new whippersnapper. Yep.
Well, and then I think it's important that we bring up that this is one of my favorite scores in this, where you have that very flamenco style pieces by Horner, and it just pairs so well with the movement of the feet, with learning the sword movements.
Yeah.
This is, you do have your normal Horner moments with the French horn, at times.
Every now and then.
But this does not off the top sound like a James Horner, your typical James Horner score, which I appreciate.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
It's in there, but yeah.
I can hear it in my head where it's like...
Yeah.
And you hear it start, and then you hear the horns come in while he's moving, and it's very, very Spanish.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, good stuff.
I think some of the ease and the connection between all these characters, again going back to the framing of the face and the emotionality of all everyone on this cast, the eyes, you know, we see the introspective nature of all these characters, and thus we know that they're thinking human beings instead of just cartoon characters. So we can make those leaps and the, you know, bridge those gaps in their relationships much more easily. You know, even the villains, you know, we have this meeting of all these dons.
Yep.
And, you know, this masquerade, so to speak, of Alejandro pretending to be this nobleman, the infiltration that way, and his kind of verbal barbs against Captain Love, and
yeah, which might not have been the smartest
banter.
move. And I like that about the character too, because he's not. I like that he makes these mistakes in just getting too much under Love's skin, drawing Love's attention towards himself.
Yeah,
it's maybe a move that a rookie would do versus someone like a Don Diego de la Vega's character.
So the thing I love about that too in those scenes is it's doing some work to make connections between him and Elena at the same time, because they're actually very similar. And they both do those little verbal barbs at people where you can interpret it two different ways and it's intentional. And it's their form of retaliation. And so because they have a similar language, you sort of see this chemistry between them, like an awareness of each other as being like, you seem like you are a kindred spirit, but I'm still trying to figure you out, sort of a thing.
Yeah. And that's a hallmark of really well written dialogue and complex, you know, character inner you know,
interplay
relationships and webs, and like that their actions and words do more than one thing at a time. You don't have to have a pairing, you know, a linear line between different people. Things actually are more of a ripple, a web. Yeah, well done.
And so also at this time we kind of get what the plan of what's his name? Don Raphael, to kind of, he has this operation in California where he's dealing with Santa Anna, but he's paying Santa Anna with his own gold. And so this is kind of the big reveal as to what this villain is really up to. And again, this is another like Batman moment where he's going against these big business villain type people. This would be very similar to like the Penguin or something. But I don't know. I kind of like how it's you're drawn to this character from a personal level. It's very like street urchin, but now he's playing in the bigger leagues, and he's almost you almost get the sense that he's like, oh, now he might be getting in over his head. So there's the tension of that as well that I like.
Of being found out.
Yeah, exactly.
But we get to, you know, we love this character because he's got the natural talent.
Yeah.
You know, we have the training, but he's got a natural spirit of fight, but he's also got this natural spirit, almost like Aladdin, like you said, street urchin jogged my mind. You know, he's quick-witted on his, you know, if he's backed up against the wall, he can work himself out of a tricky situation.
Gosh, like that scene when, you know, his brother's head is presented to him by Faith, Hope, Love. And, yeah, I don't know. The dialogue is just so cool there.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that standoff of them kind of knowing, well, Zorro really knowing, Alejandro really knowing that this guy's the guy that killed his brother. But the other guy is like, I see you.
The thing
think
is,
it's you.
Love is pretty certain.
Yeah.
I love the dance that he plays with that character.
It's so
where it's
good.
just like he kind of wants him to know who he is, but he doesn't want to give enough breadcrumbs to the point where he can go to the big boss and say like, "Hey, this is this guy."
Yeah,
because then like you'll look crazy.
He's also that much more dangerous and menacing because Love is smart. Yeah, he is onto him.
Yeah.
Love is the actual villain, I think, but he's more intelligent than Raphael, I think. As far as well, okay,
so Raphael is
different kinds.
Yeah.
But he's more easily swooned by any compliment to his station.
He's blinded by ego.
All right, no, I think I figured it out, and it does fit into the ego part, but it's the fact that Raphael is a Don, and he has to sort of convey anything, no matter what he's doing, it has to fall under how he would convey himself as a Don. So
well, if you
Love does not care.
Yeah. Well, if you remember earlier, just before the dance when he's talking to Daddy Zorro,
Daddy Zorro,
Don Diego de la Vega.
Antonio, he's saying he won't look at me. I am.
He won't look me in the eye because I am a peasant and he is a Don.
Precisely. So it is this kind of ego and self-importance
that hinders him.
He has a blind side.
Yeah. Because you can bet that he would recognize Diego's face.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can bet.
He did see him once before and didn't recognize him, so it's questionable.
But he wasn't. He like if he was thinking about it, if he was concerned about it.
But
if
I guess if we're talking about this dance between Love and Alejandro at this moment, just that scene where Three-Fingered Jack dies, and that the tension that I feel watching Alejandro try to keep his emotions in check is, and while he looks at him, like, you want to empathize with Jack and you want to show him like, oh no, I'm so sorry that you're dying, and like those little expressions that he has, like this private interaction where he's like, hey, it's me, like I'm here with
Jack
you.
Sees it.
But but having to like bottle all of that because you are in a situation where you're surrounded by vultures, basically.
I don't think that you could get any more perfect than Antonio Banderas for this.
Well,
I don't know anyone that could do it better.
I totally agree. But the weird thing is, and Love, the actor, and Reese, if you have the actor sheet up, the actor who plays Love, who is not a big name actor,
Matt Lesher.
Yeah. He is perfect in this.
Yeah,
and I never would have thought of casting him, but I can't imagine anyone else playing him.
I also like how they are mostly equally physically matched as well, too, but different styles. Like, I don't know, I feel like he's the very regimented type of militaristic type of fighter, very, like, doesn't miss a beat. And Zorro's the one he's scrappier, but they somehow are on an equal level because
there is a little bit of respect for the sword, where I think there's even a scene where Captain Love doesn't have his sword, and Zorro gives him a sword to fight. And
well, there's another moment where Love has a gun and he tosses the gun aside
exactly
to fight him.
And I love that. There is a respect for, like, I'm going to fight you
type thing.
I don't know about that, but it's more of like a
mano a mano.
It's a self-respect thing where Love's like, I am not going to take this guy's life. This is a guy I have to take 100%.
I think it's also a pride thing, though. Like, I'm going to show you that I'm better than you.
It's pride.
Yeah, exactly.
Both of them. And I love that.
Well, sorry, this is slightly off topic, but I was just looking upon my cellular device, and apparently Zorro roughly translates to fox.
No, it is 100% fox.
Fox, which, if you've seen anything about Robin Hood,
he's also equated to a fox.
Described as a fox. Then there's that Disney fox.
There's no way that AJ thought about that before he picked this.
Yeah. So very much,
that's
another
where,
little parallel.
Yeah, he's not just a brute that's just hacking and slashing.
Yeah.
No, I love all the cunning that he has. It's just great.
And Reese,
so good.
Yeah.
At the top, you kind of discussed, a little bit of, you have that hint of comedy, but that, you also, at this moment, we see these minds. We see children in these cages that are, being worked to death. I mean, there's some real, like...
heavy stuff, yeah.
Bottom of your stomach, like, you feel like heavy stuff here, too, so...
And I think the comedy only helps, like, add to how serious that is.
Having true dynamics of emotion in this movie, I mean, it's, again, I keep saying complex, but... I mean, this movie like hits all of the points, but also, you can watch it for the action and enjoy it that way. But it also has some depth if you want to consume something deeper.
Dynamic storytelling, I would say.
On that note, do we want to talk about the big action extravaganza finale here?
Yeah, baby.
Well, you want to talk about the little duel between Catherine Zeta-Jones and...
Oh, we gotta.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about it.
I know David does.
It was very formative.
I do have a fun fact, and I'm sure some of us probably already looked it up.
Go for it.
But so the original scene where I think it was, and I don't know if I remember this, but Alejandro is not full Zorro, but he's kind of there. He's not even in the full Zorro garb, goes to infiltrate sort of a base to steal a horse so he can say that, like, I got my Zorro horse.
He is his version of Zorro.
Yes, he's getting there. And he is escaping, and he ends up getting a run-in in a barn with Catherine Zeta-Jones's character, and she's like, I'm not going to let you escape. But there's like a lot of sexual tension in the air. And he's like, come on.
Oh, she's cracking a smile most of the time.
I know. That's why I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah. And she's like, I'm not letting you go. And he's like, come on. You're not going to fight me. She's like, I've been trained. We're good here. And he's like, all right, well, let's see. And they do a little test sword fight, and she kind of slashes him. And he's like, okay, she knows what she's doing. We're doing this. And they get into a full-blown sword fight where he... they
have a roll in the hay.
They roll in the hay, and he ends up, slashing her clothes. She slashes his clothes to the point where he pins her, and he does those little...
You can't be saying it like that.
It was chosen for a reason.
Anyway.
And he artistically slices her clothes off, and she is there with only pants on and covering herself. And what I think is so funny about this, and I just learned this, apparently both Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones both said that was very exhilarating sexually. Like, they both thought that was kind of like stimulating. They're like, whoa, that was a scene. And if it happened for them, of course it's going to translate.
Well, now I'm just imagining like the screenwriter who was like typing this up, like, and they're like, ooh, I know what gets me hot. But I think
it worked.
Well, it harkens back to the pulp story that, Pulp Fiction that it's based on. It's got all of that stuff.
Yeah. I think the thing I love about this scene is that it very much mirrors their interaction when they meet at the party or the soiree or whatever, where it's that their quips back and forth, ending in a dance, and then sort of leaving her exhilarated but also frustrated at the same time. It's almost exactly the same scene, but in a different context. Like,
and also probably,
I love that.
Probably a scene you wouldn't see done today.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely not.
Which is, I think, look, I won't get on this. I'm going to leave it where it lies. I'm just
it's okay to just leave it.
Yeah, I will leave it. I will just leave it at I like this
risque
scene.
without being cheap, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So much of like sexual stuff today is cheapened.
Well, I think it's because the reason this works so well is they are very well matched.
Yes.
If one of them were in any way the lesser, it would be off.
If there was a startup to this fight where Zorro just cuts her clothes off or something, like it wouldn't be the same.
That would be a problem.
It would not feel the same.
Yeah.
She actually starts by taking her own like robe off to, so she can fight better.
Well, and she actually cuts him at least twice in this. Like, she's a skilled swordsman. This is a very good fight.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Lots of good action here, such as the action in the final segment of this movie. And if there's anything I'm missing, please tell me. But we can go ahead and talk about just the final sequence here where they, Antonio or Zorro and company are transported to California, where they get to witness firsthand the kind of just the slave labor that's happening and the whole this gold mining operation. Santa Ana is, Don Day.
Just to clarify, they're already in California. There's just a spot in the
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Where the mines are.
Thank you. Yeah, I was wrong. But Don Rafael Montero is scared. I forget how it happens, but he's frightened that Santa Ana might have figured him out, and
because Zorro stole the map.
Yeah, Zorro steals that's right. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, it's been like 3 or 4 days. I should have remembered this, but it's been 3 or 4 days since I saw this movie. But that kind of frightens him into, okay, maybe we should just blow this whole operation up so there's no evidence of what happened. And this kind of sets the timer on, like, oh, we gotta do something. And both Zorros are kind of sprung into action mode, and that's what kind of triggers this final sequence here. So what do we think about the pairings of both old Zorro, new Zorro versus
Montero and Love.
Yeah, Montero and Love. I really like both of these.
So good, dude.
Yeah, both of these fight scenes. I think they're very well choreographed and
iconic.
And what's perfect, I know I just threw the question
Yes.
out to y'all, but I'm going to say my piece real quick. What's perfect about this is there's like an alchemy that it happens with movie making, and the alchemy in this movie is perfect in that the revenge part and the fight part is lining up at the perfect time. Whereas other movies, like they get there's other movies that for whatever reason they get the chemistry of that wrong,
right? And
it just doesn't hit at the exact right point that it should. This movie hits it at the exact right point for ultimate satisfaction.
They nailed the stoichiometry, so to speak.
Yeah.
The intertwining of both the personal vendetta and justice overall for the people and foiling the overall plot and plan. Not to mention the perfect ending of, we have these two simultaneous fights happening, but the defeat of Montero and the defeat of Love are intertwined in that cart that takes down Montero also lands on Love, and they both die at the same.
It's so satisfying. Also, like it's cool. We get our pre-Legolas Zorro riding down the hill on a shovel. But what I do like the fight between him and Love is so cool, where it's just tit for tat, tit for tat, tit for tat, and finally he gets the move. It's so satisfying when he throws the sword up, grabs it, and stabs him, and then the whole, as you said, the cart is triggered with the gold, and it's just like such a perfect, almost like Rube Goldberg type double death, where like one guy falls onto the other, and
one of them screaming as it falls on
the greed, the gold representing the greed and all the
their
killed by
their own
that they did against the people. Is what is their downfall too. So it's so just good. Desserts. It's fitting.
Yeah, another shout out to an earlier moment. I love seeing Zorro ride on two horses, 1 foot on each one. I'll just say,
and fighting with two swords. Yeah, I mean, so much of the choreography on everything is
looks so cool.
The choreography in this, don't hate me, might be better than Pirates of the Caribbean.
Let's not go that far. I think they're both really good.
Don't fight me. I'm just saying.
I'm with David.
It might
on this,
be there.
actually.
It might be above it.
It's influential, at least. It's inspiring.
It is influential.
Yes. In fact, one of my things going as I was watching this was like, man, this and Pirates of the Caribbean would make a great like double bill.
Oh, so much so, yes.
I would say that this one, the choreography as far as fight is a little more center stage than Pirates is.
Yeah.
They have scenes in Pirates, but it's never the focus of that movie. So this
sometimes
I think
until
this one
2, 3, and the other
one. Well,
ones.
I was saying when you. All right, no, I don't need to get into it.
Go ahead, Ariana.
No, but I think while we're talking about these action sequences, like I know I'm usually the one to yawn at action, but this is one where I didn't. And I think it's because there's just so much dynamically going on that it really does feel like a dance to me. And we've talked about this before where there is this dance element. And I think that has been throughout the film, and it's very intentional because they, especially in the beginning, they do pair it with this flamenco music where you're supposed to get engrossed in it, kind of the way a dance does between two people, where it starts off slow and then it builds into a crescendo. And so I found myself like watching every aspect of it, whereas usually I'll kind of like start looking away, look at my phone, blah, 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 wait until the hero wins and then move on. Yeah. But this one is actually like pulling me in.
Completely agree. I mean, especially Alejandro's, his style of fighting it's very natural and intrinsic to every move he does. I mean, whether it's trapping swords between sliding jail cell bars or jumping over them on the table and fighting with a dagger and two swords and, two enemies at once. It feels natural. It doesn't ever feel over the top or, forced or just too cheesy or, kind of touch on that suspension of disbelief. It's like, I completely believe this guy is that masterful.
Yeah.
I agree. So unfortunately, Don Diego de la Vega is struck a mortal blow, which we didn't talk about.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But he does get a very, oh my gosh, like touching, sweet, sad moment with his daughter, Elena, which I thought was very like, I don't know, it hit me more than I thought it would. But it just like really well executed.
It's one of those things as a kid you don't pay attention to as much, but as an adult you're like, that.
He's such a good paternal figure that you want him to more fulfill and be more paternal.
Yeah. But it's so nice that he got his moment and the other guy didn't.
Yeah.
Like he just,
it's who he was fighting for the entire movie. She was the reason this whole movie happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that moment how it's really spells out who her real father is when Raphael grabs her and like puts the gun to her head.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
and he tries to throw it off like, you didn't think I would actually shoot her, did you? Like, but the fact that you would even like
do that,
use her like that.
Yeah,
use
exactly.
her, yeah.
But
yeah.
I will say I wouldn't have. I don't think he would have.
Yeah,
but
no, I don't think so
that
either.
was the moment that helped her realize, like, 100%.
Wow, he's willing to use me as a
villain.
gambling chip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention they had those scenes where he was pretending to be Bernardo.
Yeah.
The groomer, grooming the horse and stuff. They have those quieter moments talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's still that real conversation. Again, the look in the eyes when he's talking about it.
Okay.
And they see it enough with her character that makes her I interpret her as someone that reads people pretty well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she has elements of that throughout where one of them is basically talking to, like you said, it was actually Zorro, but Bernardo, her father, when she thought he was Bernardo, and saying how Alejandro has what seems like to be two different people within him that he oscillates between. And she's more in tune with that kind of thing than most of the people around her. Yeah. So this kind of ending makes sense as far as the quick transition from her to believing the Don is her father, and when actually it is
Don Diego de la
Montero.
Vega.
Montero. Yeah.
So then we get our Temple of Doom sequence where they're releasing all the
grab the heart,
the kids,
Yeah.
and just the slaves and all that. And meanwhile, there is a explosion that cannot be stopped because we need to see a massive explosion at the end of this. And boy, when that explosion kicks off, I was like, I miss 90s movies and their real explosions.
I thought the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, this is real.
Yeah, I was like, this is cool to see. Like you can tell by the slow-mo and the stuff, like they did this for real. They're like, we want to see.
I just think of
show
Danny
every moment.
McBride in Tropic Thunder. He's like, let's go. And just
do the actual thing.
Yep.
Like, I don't care how good CGI explosions have gotten today. They never capture this the real satisfaction of a good explosion.
Kudos to all you that work on CGI explosions, but
Which
suck.
By the way, Oppenheimer is coming out this year.
We're gonna get a lot of that.
Yeah, and apparently he found a way to do a real explosion.
No, he didn't.
I don't know. It couldn't have been nuclear. But there's some trick that he must have done to like show a real explosion.
All right.
Mushroom clouds are not exclusive to nuclear explosions.
Exactly.
I do want to say though, the problem I don't think is CGI or even the practical effects that are then translated into these modern films. It has more to do with the fact that the cinematographers and the cameras nowadays, and the effects that they layer onto these films, it just doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And there's something between 2005 and 2010, I feel like in my brain, that like it just changed. And it hurts because
it hurts.
And that's why Reese, we've had this conversation, but the 90s is one of the best time for film for me because of what is going on with my throat right now.
You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead.
Power through it.
But
he's choking up on.
I'm choking up right now.
The explosions are so beautiful.
Film effects really get me, guys. But
dab your tears.
You get these practical effects mixed with this oncoming CGI, where you're getting the best of both worlds. That nowadays they're just like, do it in post, and you're just like, no, do it in real life, and then decide if you want to change it, because that's what That's what audiences resonate with. And I hate nowadays that we don't do that.
I agree. Super satisfying ending to the what a
100% like kisses.
What a terrific
So good.
set piece overall. Just these two duels between these main characters and their rivals, and then topped off with a beautiful explosion, a main character and 2 villain deaths. Like this is movie making.
It's one of my favorite death scenes for a villain.
It's just so satisfying, and the explosion is just the cherry on top. Film closes out with the new Zorro he's established. They're married, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
And Are
they? They have a kid.
They're shacking up.
Yeah, and
whatever it is.
Yeah, that's like pretty much the end of the Mask of Zorro. What did y'all think about the conclusion to this film? And did it want you wanting more, or are you like happy with this story on its own?
You know we wanted more. You know we wanted
It's like both
more.
simultaneously.
Yeah, I exactly. I know what you mean.
It's like you want to see more, but it's also it's complete.
When you have a
Like,
perfect
this story
movie,
is
it
complete.
is hard to ask for more. You're right.
Yeah. It's not even that
But
it's
I'm also
hard to ask for
complete-
more. It's just hard to live up to the standard that it's created.
Yeah.
Almost like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just like Pirates.
It's interesting because you have options. I mean, you can leave it as is, but again, Zorro is is, if anything, prolific. There's so much material out there that it can easily carry on in any permutation, whether it's Antonio Banderas again taking up the mask, or this son that we see now, Joaquin. So that's I don't know. It's a great foundation that can be a standalone or a jumping off point.
Yeah. So I have not seen the sequel in a while. I have seen it just to spoil y'all. I've seen The Legend.
It's been a while
of Zorro.
for me as well.
I'm going into this next one though. I remember being disappointed when I saw it. I'm gonna go in though expecting it to be this like an episode of TV. Like here's a serialized
The Highlander
Zorro,
series, yeah.
almost like the goofier. Like okay, now we're just into throwback.
Mm-hmm.
I think what y'all will experience with the sequel, just to prep y'all, is a regression. But I'm going into it hoping that it's still a good time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how just my mindset is. I would implore y'all to not, those who haven't seen Legend of Zorro, do not expect this that we just saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to also be
But
like...
I'm also, I'm hopeful for, some, good arguments for why things were too harsh on it or
Antonio Banderas is in the movie, guys. It's going to be okay.
I think it's... what I remember, though, it is more cartoonish. And that is... But not... Yeah, same director, though, so which is weird.
Okay.
But I'll just leave it at that. You have another note, David? You look like you're about to say something.
I was going to jump off that, just saying, like, you were confused as why would the same director come up with something more cartoonish, but more... It's right in the pinnacle change of cinema, I think, between 1999 and 2000. Like, it's...
Yeah,
was it
things are pivoting.
7 years apart. Yeah, there's a very big difference, I think.
Weirdly large
CGI
gap.
killed the film star.
With that said, let's close out our talk on the story to this movie and take a quick break. On the other end, we'll get into our brief reviews of the numbered scores, talk about what critics thought, get into some box office, and close out with a little bit of franchise talk. And who we might recast in the role of Zorro. See y'all then. Welcome back. Let's talk The Mask of Zorro. And David, I don't think you have our numbered scores, so you just
I was going to, but apparently not.
You do have them? No, you don't, because you can't, because I didn't give mine.
Well, there you go. I had a plan, but that plan is gone.
So, AJ, you wanna call us out at random, or give us your own one first? Just we'll just do it like that.
Why do I get to do it? What is going on?
Go ahead. I'll let David do it.
David took my whole plan.
You're
I
being
didn't know
punished.
you sounded like you didn't have a plan at all.
No, you're saying
I always have a backup plan.
Okay, what do you want to do, David?
Well, the first plan is up. Second plan is up now.
Okay,
So,
what is that? Is it just calling people at random?
yeah, that is my second plan. Yes.
Okay, cool.
It's a good plan. What was your first plan?
My first plan was to pretend like I had a bowl
Okay, cool.
and call people at random and let them say their freaking scores.
We didn't.
All right. First up is Noah.
I give this bad boy
A 9.
All right.
Yeah. I think this movie is, pretty nearly perfect for what it is. Obviously there's a little bit, I don't really care too much about it, but there's a little bit of whitewashing and,
That's not
so-
why you gave it a 9.
yeah. I just love the movie.
You're like, I just love the movie. 9. Come on. What's
No
the
other
number
comment?
one?
All right. Twist my arm 9.5.
No, that wasn't
no.
it.
Twist my arm 10.0.
I am
What would
curious.
you like
what
to
is
see more of in this movie?
What is the biggest thing? Yeah.
What is the biggest thing? What?
That you
You'd
would
like to see
more
that.
of.
Would you adjust anything?
Yeah.
I really don't know. That's a hard. One of the big things for me is it doesn't feel like a 10, and it doesn't quite feel like a 10.
That's fair.
But I emotionally want to give it a 10. But at the same time, I'm not going to do that because I know there are things.
I feel that. I know exactly.
There are
what
other
you're saying.
things that I would put slightly higher on the totem pole that I also wouldn't give a 10.
Yeah.
I think 9 is really fair for what this is. I think,
You're going off gut, is what you're saying.
I enjoy the romance. I enjoy adventure. I enjoy a good revenge story. The characters are amazing.
I guess that's what surprises me because this is right up your alley.
Yeah,
for
I know.
like-
That's why I'm giving it a 9.5 instead of a 9.
All right.
Yeah.
9.5.
9.5. Moving on
Yeah.
up.
I don't know. I really can't find a good criticism for it. I would argue against any criticism.
You're fighting yourself at this point.
Yeah. No, you're going more with a gut reaction.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's valid.
Antonio Banderas is hot. So is Catherine
Two Ts.
Zeta-Jones.
All right.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a good ending.
I like how that's the
point.
cap.
Anthony Hopkins.
9.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? Next up, I'm just going to go ahead and go with myself just because I feel like it's a good segue.
All right. 10.
I am going to give it a 10.
Wow.
And because, in a similar vein, I was like, there's a gut feeling like, is it a 10? I don't know. I don't,
What's another movie you give a 10?
I mean, I gave Goodwill Hunting a 10. I gave 2049 a 10. I think
Didn't you give Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 10?
No.
Minus
no,
3.
no. Yeah,
minus
that was
3.
more of a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason that got knocked down to a 7 is the Yeti wasn't the main character.
I thought it was the rewatchability factor.
Not enough football.
Apparently not as rewatchable as I thought. Yeah, but this movie, I was debating and just seeing it on, hearing the music, I don't know, man. This has a pinhole in my heart. Like, it's just stapled into my chest.
Yeah.
I will watch
This
movie.
movie's pinning you down like Antonio Banderas pinned down Catherine Zeta-Jones.
I will,
Exactly.
I will allow it.
Yeah, little did you
This
realize
movie's cutting David's shirt off.
the awareness wasn't of Catherine Zeta-Jones, it's of what was being done to her.
Yeah.
You want the same
I want
treatment.
somebody to take a sword and rip my clothes off.
All right.
This movie is...
Only problem is you don't have the hair to cover your titties.
Oh, I do. It's just different kind. I have a lot of chest hair.
Oh, no.
All right. Anyway, this movie, I was between 9.5 and 10. It was up for debate, and just rewatching it, I just love this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't love a movie this much, why not give it a 10?
Yeah.
This is a rare occasion where
You got a good point. Can I change?
You're going up to it?
I didn't even say anything. Well, how did I convince
This
you?
is Noah, this is our podcast.
was in
You
your
can do whatever
eyes.
you
Look,
want.
here's what it is. Sorry to interrupt your.
No, go
review
for it.
portion.
Yeah, go for it.
I just feel so hard for this movie,
I like it.
Great.
Phrasing.
and
I think that was intentional.
no, okay, legitimately, there's just I don't know. It's a heart thing.
Yeah.
You know, like how could I not? You know.
Yeah, that's exactly why I gave it a 10. I was between the two.
No,
I'm like,
that's why I'm saying you convinced me.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
And rewatching it, like, how can you not? Just every single scene is so good. The music is so good. The choreography is so good. there are a few movies that just, especially popcorn movies, I want to say. I feel like all the movies up to this point that I have given 10s were not popcorn movies. And maybe AJ, you can fact check me on that, but I feel like I'm one of the bottom as far as giving out 10s.
Mm-hmm.
This is my first popcorn movie, I think, for giving out a 10. It's a popcorn movie.
Elf.
It is so good at everything it does. I can't think of anything I would change.
You gave Elf a 10, he pointed out.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Gosh, those were okay. Those were as of late too. Yeah. I definitely put myself in the hole on that one.
You've been more lenient with age.
Although I wouldn't say Napoleon Dynamite.
Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Oh,
It is.
Shut
That's
up! You already made that joke. Napoleon Dynamite is not a popcorn movie.
All right, continue.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard because just everything about this movie I love. So where do you even begin? So I just will end it there and let somebody else give their review.
Where do you begin? Let's not
I'll end
begin.
it there.
Yeah, I've talked a lot in this
even
episode. So
Where do you even
That's
begin? I'll end it there.
that's a quote. Put it on a t-shirt.
Can we put...
Or your tombstone.
Oh, wow.
Tomb of the David Emperor. All right. Next up, we have Irina.
I've gone back and forth between 9.5 and 10, and I think I'm just going to go with 10, but I'm going to talk from the perspective of the 9.5, where
Interesting.
this movie is, well, I think it needs to be heard any possible criticism I can have of it. And this movie, though, has everything. You know, there are not
Good
a lot
criticism.
of movies that boast having both romance and this sense of adventure and action and something that actually feels all encompassing as far as audience goes. And I mean, that's what it is for me, where both boys and girls could watch this and have a good time. The one thing, if anything, I would possibly criticize it about is maybe having Elena do something a little extra. I think she's perfect the way she is, but a little more connection between her and what's being done to the location that she's been placed in.
She couldn't even free all the prisoners on her own.
No,
Like,
yeah,
she was like
it's like
freeing
there
them,
was,
and then like
that was
gives
the
a-
one moment where I was like, oh yeah, okay, they're having her do something that's part of this overarching political issue, and even that she wasn't able to do 100%. But the thing is, I can argue against that because it makes sense with her station and the fact that she just doesn't have a lot of agency in regard to these kind of things. So it makes sense. But I think I would have liked, especially since they do show a little bit of her walking through the city, maybe just a little more observation of the injustices being done. There are moments where she is sort of aware of it, but that would be the only thing, and that's not even much. So I'm still gonna go with a 10 because I think this movie is a genre film, and they already have put so much into it, and the writing is so good. It's perfect for me. So I'm sticking with 10 because that's my gut choice.
All right. Next up, we have AJ. I'll let you give your score.
Oh, or was it like, yeah, I thought I texted it to you.
No, 4.5.
Yeah, I gave this a 10.
Oh, man.
You know, I've got a little bit of the same slight hesitation for the 10. I don't think this is perfect, but this is very close to it. Really what this is missing, compared to other things that are maybe more my favorite movies, this just maybe is missing a little bit of sparkle. I think it's ironic. There are two opportunities for improvement here. Well, not opportunities, two comments, let's say. I really like James Horner. I wish this had a bit stronger of a theme, maybe more, variations on a theme pervasive of these, identifying characters. I have the elder Zorro have his own theme, and the younger have his theme, Elena's theme. I think that would be more of an epic, an everlasting epic, if there was a bit stronger punch to the music, with, imparting identity in its own right. It's good, but there's opportunity there, in my opinion. That's probably the main thing I could improve, hope to improve upon. Yeah. That said, this is, I like, kind of suggesting this to people. This is definitely a movie that works incredibly well on mute. And it's really cool comparing it to the 1920 version, which was a silent film, a swashbuckling film. And it is to this film's credit that it lives up to that reputation, does homage to the reputation and history of Zorro, as well as improving upon it, adding its own identity to it, that this can be viewed in an art form as a silent film. And that is also to all of the cast's credit. Every single cast member here, our villains, our support, our protagonists. I mean, gosh, just it's like I mentioned Sergio Leone, with his close-ups and views of the human face as its own, medium for conveying a story, emotion. And this, feels like an understudy to that. And the lighting, the filming, the visuals of this movie, all help that. But just seeing sparkles and light playing in people's eyes when there's you can't hear what they're saying. I want to see how they're interacting, and that is, it works incredibly well. Seeing characters interacting with other characters realistically, while I'm watching a guy in a domino mask and a sombrero and a rapier, doing backflips and fighting two people, like, it is simultaneously real but fantastic, but completely, I'll steal Reese's word, it's alchemy. It's turning something real to something fantastic, but it is completely natural. This movie just hits all of those tones and beats for the art form that a visual story, that's taken off the pages of Pulp Fiction, story from the history books. And we see depravity in humans and oppression, and children in cages and mines and people sent to their death, but also someone laughing in the face of danger and, being a hero to other people. And, really lives up to the legend of this character behind the mask. This movie just is a complete success in everything that I would hope for in a movie about, a heroic person. And the fact that this person is someone in history that's a complicated person with their own history, or there's meat to that, on that bone to chew into if you want to, all the more reason to love it for me. Watch this movie on silent. I encourage you. I think you'll get farther than you expect. And that's just to the credit of how all these cast members do so well in talking to each other with their eyes and their faces and their emotions and expressions and hatred and love and lust. And I don't know. It's great. It's great. Yeah. So very deserving of a 10.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. We have 4 10s.
Oh, wow.
No pressure here. There couldn't be any.
You should have had me last. I didn't, just to not put Reese on the spot.
Oh, I did it on purpose. Why? It's one of the rare occasions where I didn't have the numbers, I didn't have the names. I just decided to go off gut.
Now let's hear this 8.5.
I will confess, I am not giving this movie a 10.
I respect it.
That's fine.
I'm not giving it an 8.5 either. I am giving it a solid 9 out of 10.
All right.
And
I think that's fair.
How do you justify that?
No, it is purely it is purely a gut check coming out of the movie. Like, I did not break down my criticisms of this film. I was just like, how did I feel after watching that movie? And my feeling was 9 out of 10. Like, it is like very close to a perfect time watching this type of movie. And I think when I grade this movie, it is against its peers. Like, this is against this movie's competition is something like Raiders of the Lost Ark at the top tier.
Right.
Like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, Pirates is
The Mummy.
contender.
Like movies like that are just... I'd totally put The Mummy in there. David's giving me this weird look. There's very
You wouldn't
similar...
put this movie in that camp.
I would. Yes. The Mummy is excellent. I love The Mummy.
No, I
and
know. I just every movie you named, I'm like, yeah.
Action
how does
adventure.
this not fit in
action,
that?
heightened action adventure with comedy. Like it
No,
is
he's
straight
saying
up
they
that.
go together.
Yeah.
He's making it sound like you wouldn't give some of those a 10.
Yeah, he is making it sound
No,
like
like my 10 in this category is Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's the peak of this type of slightly campy action adventure, humorous, like slightly historically based. Like it, that's where it's at. And I don't think it's quite up there at that upper echelon of that, but it is like as close as you can come. And that is the most negative I will say about this movie. Moving on to positive.
Good.
I think this movie is excellent. I think it is just perfectly calibrated swashbuckling entertainment that I am just so upset that we don't get today. Like watching this movie was just made me really kind of depressed about how current cinema is with at least blockbuster entertainment. It is just like blockbusters today and big budget movies are just so shallow and processed and there's no like tactile feeling when watching them. There's the occasional one that shines through and is good, like the Batman and Top Gun Maverick. Like those ones, kudos to those for prolonging like actual cinematic competence in big budget filmmaking. But apart from that, like all your Marvel movies, which yes, they're diverting entertainment, I'll give them that. But and just all the other schlock that we get today cannot touch what the Mask of Zorro is at. Like it's not even close. And it just makes me sad that we can't reach for this anymore. Why can't we have this triumphant James Horner score? Well, yeah, James Horner is dead, I get it. But like
I get it.
but like an equivalent of like this big heroic moment that isn't afraid to like have like the crescendo of a score hit at the right moment when like the sword's going up in the air and then off on a chase and you just get this propulsive feel that is just invigorating to watch. You don't get that in movies today, or it's very rare. And it was just kind of just disheartening, weirdly, just watching this again, just being reminded that we didn't have to go that far back where we had movies like this. And now it just seems like now what we have is just this meta crap humor in every movie that's like, how did I find myself here, you might be asking? Like, and then just references and just
I
like...
know exactly what you're talking
Filling
about.
out a formula versus something that is created.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just give me an earnest, fun story that, like, all the pieces are in their right place and everything just, like, all you got to do is set the first domino and the full thing creates this very satisfying, like, just everything lays out in this perfect way. And that's this movie. It's just, like, very well scripted, very well executed, excellent performers, actors, and just a story that is very simple to its core and told effectively. Like it's simple, but it's told effectively, and that's why it works. Like it doesn't have to be complex.
Great tempo.
Yes. So yeah, I love this movie, and I hate to be the lone not 10 score, but that's
fine.
Yeah, it's strictly just a gut check against other movies in its wheelhouse that I can't quite give it the same score as like a Raiders. It's just, but it's so close. It's really so close, and I love this movie, guys. So
all right,
9 out of 10.
I like it.
I'm actually glad that you did because I was also grappling.
We all did apparently.
Yeah, and 9 I feel like is a great score.
Oh
So,
yeah, it
like,
is. It's not like it's anything really negative.
All right, you want to crunch those numbers for us, AJ?
Okay. The Mask of Zorro has a group average of 9.8. That ties it with Sicario and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So high praises for The Mask of Zorro from our group.
Yeah, I'm honestly it did the work. It got up there. That's crazy. Yeah. I love it.
Just a reminder, we did have a couple of perfect scores for our group. Perfect 10s for Blade Runner 2049 and Good Will Hunting. And the company that I mentioned a little bit, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, we had a 9.7, as well as The Shining. So, yeah, this movie impressed us.
Yes,
to say the least.
Certainly did.
Yeah, and I like that we're putting our stamp of approval on this one and pushing it higher. I think it deserves that placement.
Yeah.
I think this movie, it was received well back then, but it is aging even better when
that's a good
contrasted
point.
against the movies today. And I'm glad that we can kind of give it that acknowledgement that it deserves.
Of
I
course.
kind of wish you gave it a 9.5 so it could be a definitive number 3, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
I do think we have to acknowledge though that it was not, revolutionary in its field. Like I think it's somewhat unfair to say that, there wasn't some sort of algorithm in place at this point or rubric for success when you had Princess Bride and stuff like that came before this.
That's another comparison I didn't mention.
I brought Princess Bride up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just, I think it's just okay. Every generation has, that thing that's popular at the time, and there are iterations that are better than others.
Yeah.
And this is one of those extremely good iterations. And I
Yeah.
think our days,
Well, there are a select few that
Yeah.
withstand the test of time, and
Yeah.
it's for a reason.
Yeah, so Princess Bride, Zorro are amongst them.
Yeah.
But it's kind of those rose-tinted glasses that
Yeah.
we're looking at these things with, these
Yeah.
movies with,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
should acknowledge that because modern, the stuff that's coming out now, I think can be just as good for people
That
growing
reason,
up.
Because
Yeah.
movies 10 years from now
Yeah.
will be even dumber.
Well, no, that's not necessarily fair. I think,
I'm joking.
along with what Noah's saying, and Princess Bride, thinking about it, really kind of put a better phrase for it for me is this movie. Princess Bride is emblematic of the late 80s for me.
Yeah.
And The Mask of Zorro is emblematic of movies of the 90s.
Yeah.
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 It carries the standard for it.
Agreed.
It's not necessarily the top, but it is among what I consider,
Yes.
great 90s movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I just think, I just think it's kind of callous to say everything these days is,
No, I
not going
I
to
get
be
that.
as good.
Which is not what I said. I defended Top Gun Maverick and
Yeah, that's fair.
the Batman. I think
Yeah.
those are good
It's-
examples of modern, well-made blockbuster entertainment.
Yeah,
I
will
know what
say,
you're saying, though. I think it's a narrative of every generation
Yeah.
that there is a bunch of
Yeah,
kind of fluff out there, but within it, there are nuggets of
Yeah.
something truly good.
yeah. I do. One thing I do agree with, and this is kind of my sentiment or your sentiment, and I agree with it, is that they are less doing these kinds of action adventure movies that were one of the best things of that time.
Mm-hmm.
More they're doing, sci-fi and
We got the Jungle Cruise, but when you watch that, it is very synthetic and
Don't
not
compare
that
the
is
Jungle Cruise.
and that is a box office these days.
Don't.
But, box office.
All right, y'all want to hear what critics thought? On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 83%.
Wow.
With a audience score, this is baffling, of 73%. Audiences liked this one less than critics. And that you will find not on Metacritic. Metacritic critics were lower with a 63 out of 100.
What?
Audiences 8.4 out of 10. But then IMDb audiences pull it down again to a 6.8 on
That's
IMDb.
weird.
Which is it is
Are
weird.
you people?
When did they start scoring?
Rotten Tomatoes is a aggregate of scores from the time and more modern scores all kind of averaged together. So you can keep critics can keep adding scores to.
I'm just thinking
Rotten
that
Tomatoes.
modern might hinder the initial release reaction.
Hinder the initial. What do you mean by that?
Like modern day people look back and it doesn't match up to what I expect.
It's the opposite. I think modern audiences like the movie more than
No way.
No, it is true. At least in critic circles, what I clock, most people revisiting Mask of Zorro are like, "This is excellent."
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
Well, they
idiots.
probably thought. See, think about it this
the
way.
modern ones who like it.
Everybody who took their time to get here. You're like, what are you talking about?
Think about it at the time. Zorro was probably, that's a box office movie. Yeah, that would be the popular thing to like. So all the critics and
No,
people are like,
it hurts me to think
Yeah.
that like they're watching a like, actually, it's pretty good. Guys, you should watch this Mask of Zorro movie. Like, shut
Guys,
up.
Probably
at
also
least-
like, I don't like the way they portray the white man in this movie.
Let's not guys. The movie got good reviews from critics.
I hate
let's
it.
not act like
You guys
they're
are so up in arms.
like they're not burning it
They
at the
gave it a
stake.
70 on IMDb.
6.8.
Even worse.
Yeah, the IMDb one's the baffling one to me because 7 is what qualifies as good on IMDb. 7 up, and then this got 6.8. That doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, moving on. Box office. This movie released on July 17th in 1998. Let's wheel back the time. See what came out during this weekend. We have a Lethal Weapon 4, Armageddon. There's Something About Mary, and Dr. Dolittle.
I swear, if Something About Mary got a higher IMDb score than this movie.
Yeah.
Zorro had to have won that weekend.
This movie, okay, they said
Lethal
I
Weapon's
mentioned
good, but-
60 million earlier, but there's actually a reported budget on this one of 95 million. So they offered Robert Rodriguez the movie for 41 million. He declined because he needed 42 million, and then the movie ended up costing 95 million. So that's pretty humorous. Double what they were, even more than double.
Genius.
Genius. What did this movie do worldwide, though?
Are we basing it off of 65 or 95?
95.
All right.
Let's go 95.
And also, this is inflated, right?
I'm not inflating this
Or
one.
are we doing 90? 90 is the
Doesn't
cutoff,
matter,
right?
though.
90 is about where, like, Robin Hood, that Prince of Thieves is about, like, the inflation cutoff for me. So this one was after that, so I did not do inflation on this one. So 95 million. Let's start with you, David. Worldwide for The Mask of Zorro.
Well, now that I know the scores, it really hinders the word of mouth boost that I was going to give this one.
And it took a long time for the sequel to come out.
It sure did. Wow, that actually gave me another little hint. Thank you, Reese.
I don't know if that's a hint or not. I'm just throwing that out there.
It sure is, actually.
Okay.
Based on everything I've learned from you. I'm going to give this 200 million.
Okay.
Weak.
Oh, trust me, it hurts
All right.
me to say it.
Noah,
It hurts
since you were
me
the next one to say something, I'll go to you, Noah.
I'm going balls to the wall, 500.
Love it.
No,
200 and 500. That's the biggest swing I think we've seen.
I love it.
AJ, how about you?
What month did you say this was?
July 17th.
Summer. Okay.
So Lethal Weapon 4,
250.
Armageddon, There's Something About Mary, and Dr. Dolittle are playing.
Oh, this had to be the big movie.
Yeah, 500.
Armageddon was huge.
Yeah, Armageddon was
Yeah.
Armageddon.
Lethal Weapon's pretty big, too.
Lethal
And
Weapon.
Mel Gibson. Yeah.
Oh, was it
Four.
4?
And by the way, There's Something About Mary was a
4 is a
massive
good one,
Ben
actually.
Stiller hit.
I know it was.
And Dr. Dolittle? Eddie Murphy was big
I
at the
saw
time,
that
too.
in theaters.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
These
Hey,
are
but
all-
Zorro, man, everyone knows the trailer.
These are, but I will say, AJ, these are all hits. Like all the movies that's playing against are hits. I'm not trying to hint at
say-
anything. I promise.
I'm
I'm
going
just
to say
saying.
250.
250. All right, Irina.
I was going for 300.
AJ, you got it dead on.
No,
I call cheating.
250 million on the dot. Actually, 250.2.
How
If
does
you want
it
to do that,
feel
200,000
to be the one that
So
guessed
not
on
on
the
the dot.
low side for Zorro.
I was closer than you.
Doesn't matter. I had high hopes.
David had no
Well,
faith.
I think
I didn't.
that number of 60 kind of stuck in your head too, probably was what I said. I was trying to add a little bit more to the triple.
Yeah. Despite the ballooning budget on this movie that happened during production, it ended up costing more than they wanted it to. The movie was still a big hit. This is what really put like Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones like it made them stars. Like Antonio Banderas was already on his way, but this really like solidified
it,
Catherine
yeah.
Zeta-Jones and Antonio Banderas. Catherine Zeta-Jones actually cites this movie as the one that really put her on the map and got like kickstarted her career. In fact, I think Spielberg saw her in some like Titanic miniseries or something and thought like,
that was
oh,
it.
you're good. And that's how she got the role for this. And then this kind of catapulted her into stardom.
Ironically, the Titanic miniseries before the movie.
Yeah. But this kind of predates our rule for movies having to make 3 times their budget to be successful. This one almost made 3 times. Not quite. But there was a lot less marketing mumbo jumbo back then. Like it didn't cost as much to do all that, and just stuff worked differently back then. So a movie could make like double its budget and be okay. And because at this time you'd get a ton in like physical media sales afterwards, because that people loved buying the VHS or the DVD
And Zorro was a
and doing
brand.
all that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was banking as much on like, oh man, people love Zorro, so they're going to see this. I think it was more just like, oh, people kind of are aware of Zorro, so maybe that will factor in some way. Very similar to a Robin Hood, where it's like, that used to work, probably wouldn't work today.
Did it do better globally or in the Americas?
It almost always the case is it makes more overseas because there's just so many countries.
Yeah. So
yeah, it did a little better internationally. Domestically, it did 94 million. Overseas, it did 156 million.
All right.
So good. This is a good take, like solid hit for Zorro, and I think it did really well post-release as well with just the physical media, as I said. And when we're going to franchise talk, I attribute the not having a sequel for 7 years to be just a product of the times. Like, people didn't rush sequels out the door as much as they do today. Like, I think that's just today. There's such short attention spans that once something comes out and it's a hit, we gotta strike while the iron's hot.
Start working on a second one.
Yeah, like the only thing that I think of older movies that really rushed sequels out the door were like horror franchises. They would get those out real quick because they're easy to make and they could just like pump them out.
Slashers.
Yes, mostly slashers. Yeah. But yeah, this I just don't think they were in any rush. They had a solid hit. Antonio Banderas went off and did a bunch of Spy Kids movies, and amongst other things. There's that Robert Rodriguez connection, by the way.
And
yeah,
Shrek
as well, but only 2 and 3, and then Puss in Boots and all that. Which new Puss new Puss in Boots apparently really good, which I do want to see that movie. So yeah, I could look deeper into it, and maybe we'll go into it in our next episode as to why it took so long. But I just don't think there was any rush to push the sequel out the door because they had a solid hit on their hands, and maybe if it had made even more, that would have incentivized them to put another sequel out there more quickly. But I think, I get the sense that they just like to rest and enjoy the money raining down on them for a little while before like starting the next thing off. But next week we are covering the sequel to this movie, The Legend of Zorro, which this is one of the rare cases where I'm ashamed to say I was like, which one came first? Like, both titles are kind of like sound like first movies in a way. Did any of y'all have the same issue where it's
100%.
Like The Mask of Zorro, The Legend of Zorro?
Legend of Zorro sounds like a first movie.
Yeah, and now looking back, I'm like, oh, of course Mask of Zorro was first. But when I was first looking up the first movie, I was like, oh, was it called The Legend of Zorro or Mask of Zorro? So next week, we're talking about The Legend of Zorro, also directed by Martin Campbell, his sequel to this film. And we'll see how it fares. I know it's this one's known to not be as good as the first. And some of us have seen it, maybe some of us haven't. But we'll look at it with our new modern day lens and see how it holds up. I'm excited to revisit it. Movies like this, I'm most excited to revisit because they're just like, they had to follow a movie that was really good, and now I can kind of watch it more objectively. So I wonder if watching it more objectively and giving it the benefit of the doubt makes it or makes it fare better. We'll see. Any final comments on The Mask of Zorro or The Legend of Zorro, y'all?
No.
Put some respect on it.
Okay. All right. With that said, we're going to close out this episode next week. Legend of Zorro. Goodbye, you all.
For there must always, always be a Zorro. And someday, when he's needed, we'll see him again.